Chapter 664. Grandma Sure was old, but she lived in a small place and worked all year round. Her body was very strong. Her palm was wide and rough. With this slap, Shi Mingwan's face would definitely swell. Shi Mingwan gritted her teeth and stood there, not wanting to back down at all. Mother Shi, who had been silent all this time, finally came over. She quickly pulled Grandma Shi's hand away and pulled Shi Mingwan behind her. Mom, if there's anything you want to say, then say it. It's rare for Nanan to come back. Must you act like this? I'll talk nicely. Why didn't I say it properly? After so many years, have you given birth to a son for Master? Huh. It's for your own good that I let you adopt third brother's family. What's wrong? Do you really have to be so ungrateful? Mom. Grandma, how can I appreciate it? Tell me. Shi Mingwan stood behind Mother Shi and was so angry that she almost laughed. Cousin is already 11 this year, right? If he had known who his parents were, he would have let my mom adopt him. Will my mom be close to him? If they couldn't be related, what was there to adopt? Raising someone else's son? Besides, my mom is fine now. She has a daughter. Why would she want to adopt someone else's son? Grandma Shi was furious and pointed at Shi Mingwan. How can a son and a daughter be the same? Let me tell you, a son has to carry on the family line. Can you? Why can't I? Shi Mingwan took a step forward. Grandma, let me tell you, I'm just going to invite a man to my house and let my child's surname be Shi. What's wrong with that? As soon as he said that, the neighbors who were watching the fun all gasped. Even Mother Shi looked at Shi Mingwan in shock. Wan, what nonsense are you talking about? Shi Mingru was young, but she could tell from the reactions of the people around her that what Shi Mingwan said was very impressive. She looked at Shi Mingwan worriedly. Mom, I'm not talking nonsense. Shi Mingwan turned around and looked at her mother's face, which was no longer young. All these years, Mom had sacrificed so much for this family. But all these couldn't compare to the sin of not giving birth to a son in Grandma's eyes. She couldn't take it anymore. She turned around and looked at Grandma Shi. Grandma, I'm looking for a son-in-law. The child I gave birth to will be surnamed Shi. This way, it could be considered as carrying on the bloodline of the Shi family, right? You use me what? Can't I? I think it's a good idea. Shi Mingwan stood there with a determined look on her face. There are so many families that don't have daughters. It's not like they're all cut off. It wasn't like there had never been such a thing. If I recruit one, what do you think, Grandma? If you have the ability to get one and give birth to a child with the surname Shi, that will naturally count. Okay, Grandma said that. Shi Mingwan wanted to hear that. I hope Grandma won't go back on her words in the future. Grandma Shi was rendered speechless by her. In the end, she nodded vigorously. Okay, that's fine too. I would like to see which man would agree to such a thing. As she spoke, Grandma Shi sneered. Do you think you can find such a good man? Willing to marry into his family? And you're even willing to let your child have your surname? Zhan Hao's face flashed across Shi Mingwan's mind. For a moment, she was also uncertain. However, even if she lost in person, she wouldn't lose in spirit. At this time, she definitely wouldn't admit defeat. Yes, I'll find it. If I find it. Grandma, can you stop mentioning the matter of my parents adopting a son? Okay, if you can do it, I won't mention the matter of adoption anymore. As Grandma Shi spoke, she glanced at Shi Mingwan with obvious contempt in her eyes. But you can't keep looking, right? What if you can't find it? Or you're using the delaying method to deceive an old woman like me? Then what do you want, Grandma? We need to set a time. Grandma Shi thought for a moment. 1 year. I'll give you 1 year. If you can find a man who agrees to be a son-in-law and is willing to give birth to a child with your surname, I won't mention the matter of adoption anymore. 1 year? Shi Mingwan thought of Zhan Hao again. She bit her lip and closed her eyes. Grandma, I don't even have a boyfriend right now. You said you'll only give me 1 year? Where can I find one? Especially with such a condition, it'll take at least 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 5 years? I don't know if I'll live to that day. Grandma Shi sneered as if she had seen through Shi Mingwan's thoughts. You want to drag it out until I die? Shi Mingwan, there's no such thing. The neighbors whispered among themselves. Many people looked at Shi Mingwan and agreed with her grandmother's words. They felt that she was deliberately stalling for time. 2 years. Shi Mingwan gritted her teeth and went all out. Grandma, 2 years. Within 2 years, I'll definitely find a man who's willing to be a son-in-law and let the child be born with my surname. When the time comes, you can't mention the matter of adoption anymore. Okay. Grandma sure nodded and looked at Shi Mingwan from head to toe. Her gaze was really uncomfortable. However, Shi Mingwan didn't mind. Instead, she stood there openly for her to see and also for the other neighbors to see. She would do what she said. These people were all witnesses. One girl, your abilities have gradually grown over the years. I'll wait. I'd like to see if you can find the man you're talking about in 2 years. She snorted. Grandma Shi, who had achieved her goal, walked out of the courtyard door. She despised Shi Mingwan's mother for not having a son, so she didn't want to live with her eldest son's family. Instead, she stayed at her second son's house. The neighbors who had come to watch the show had also finished watching the show, so they all dispersed. Mother Shi looked at her daughter with an anxious expression. Wan, how could you agree to something like this? In this society, which man would be willing to be a son-in-law? If there really was such a man, he would definitely be a man without much ability or with very poor conditions. Which man with good conditions would be willing? Although Shi Mingru was only 13 years old, she looked at Shi Mingwan worriedly. Yes, sister. How could you tell Grandma such a condition? It's okay. I know what I'm doing. Mother Shi looked troubled. She wanted to persuade her again, but Father Shi had already returned. He went to a wedding in another city today and heard about what happened at home as soon as he came back. He didn't even have time to stop the car and quickly got out of the car. He first looked at his wife and daughter. Then his gaze fell on Shi Mingwan. Wan, are you okay? Dad, I'm fine. Shi Mingwan had complicated feelings about her father. She knew that he treated her mother very well, but sometimes she still felt that he was a little too soft. At least on the matter regarding her grandmother, she really had some grievances. Wan, I just heard that you agreed to your grandmother's condition. What condition? Dad. Shi Mingwan wanted to say that it was fine, but Shi Mingru couldn't help it anymore. She repeated what Shi Mingwan said to Father Shi. Father Shi's face turned red with anger. He looked at Shi Mingwan. I'll go find your grandmother. I'll tell her that I can't let you agree to such a thing. Even if his daughter was a girl, she was still the treasure in his palm. How could he watch his daughter live an unhappy life in the future? Dad. Shi Mingwan looked at Father Shi with a calm expression. I'm serious. Dad, don't go find Grandma. Even if you can make Grandma give up today, she will bring it up in the future. Since that's the case, you might as well listen to me. At least, Grandma will give us 2 years of peace. But Father Shi looked at Shi Mingwan, his eyes full of heartache. When 2 years are up, are you really going to recruit a man? Why not? Shi Mingwan didn't think that what she was doing was wrong. I think it's pretty good. Wan. Mother Shi wanted to say something, but hesitated. She looked troubled. You don't understand. How can things be as easy as you think? You might have forgotten about the aunt from your third aunt's-in-law's family. Mother Shi glanced at Father Shi and was very helpless. Her family didn't have a son, so they got a son-in-law. But that son-in-law said that he was recruited and that it was fine if he ate, drank, and didn't work. In the end, he even went out to find a woman. He said that the child he gave birth to didn't take his surname anyway, so it couldn't be considered his. Yes, Father Shi sighed as well. He knew about that cousin. Your aunt was tormented by that man and passed away before she was 50. Wan, it's not that I don't want you to find a son-in-law, but there's really no man in this world who's willing. Mom, Dad, stop talking. I know what to do. Don't worry, I'll definitely find a suitable man. Shi Mingwan actually didn't believe it herself, but so what? Compared to her parents' difficulties, her sacrifice was nothing. After accompanying her parents for a night, Shi Mingwan tossed and turned on her bed at night, unable to fall asleep. She had agreed happily during the day, but she had forgotten about John Hauser. She had never thought of being with a man other than John Hauser, but she didn't know what John Hauser thought. She remembered that a long time ago, she had asked her dear brother about his parents. He coldly replied to her with 2 words, dead. She could feel the disdain dear brother had for his parents from his usual behavior. Since that was the case, was it possible that he would be willing to marry into the family? She suddenly sneered. Did John Hauser have a future with her? He had long forgotten everything that had happened between him and Gu Shijio. He was no longer her dear brother. How could he have a future with her? Not to mention marrying into the family. Shi Mingwan tried her best to get rid of that thought and stop thinking about it. Before she fell asleep, her last thought in a daze was, she gave herself 2 years. In 2 years, if she couldn't win Zhang Hao's heart, if she couldn't make Zhang Hao fall in love with her, think of her, and be with her, then she would give up. Before that, she still had to work hard. Shi Mingwan only stayed at home for a day before returning to Lin City. It was the end of the year, and there were many banquets. Their studio was also busy. She focused all her attention on her work and went to see Xiang Kaiping when she had time. It was almost the new year, and she had to settle some things before the new year. A week before the new year, she saw Zhang Hao again. This time, he came with Chen Feifei. The moment Shi Mingwan saw Zhang Hao, she was stunned for a moment, but only for a moment. Miss Chen, hello. Because Chen Feifei had specifically asked Shi Mingwan to serve her, Shi Mingwan could only cheer up and socialize with Chen Feifei. Hello. The weather was getting colder. Chen Feifei was wearing a rabbit fur top with Chanel's new winter clothes inside. The air conditioner was on in the room. She took off the top and handed it to Zhang Hao. Brother Hao, help me take it. Shi Mingwan used a lot of willpower to force herself not to say that they had a special place to hang VIP clothes. I have 2 cocktail parties to attend during the new year. I want you to help me choose 2 sets of dresses. There was a faint smile on Chen Feifei's face. She looked at Shi Mingwan with a friendly gaze, but if one looked carefully, one could see that there was a hint of wariness and displeasure in her eyes. Chen Feifei's appearance was the weak type. She looked so weak that she couldn't even stand the wind. She didn't like women who were too beautiful, especially people like Shi Mingwan. That was why she was willing to come to song-seeking studio. Why? Because she wanted to torment Shi Mingwan. So what if she was beautiful? She could only be a clothes maker. If Shi Mingwan knew what Chen Feifei was thinking, she would definitely be speechless. A fashion designer was not the same as a clothes maker. Miss Chun, our studio has launched a new Cherry Blossom series. There are a total of 9 styles in this Cherry Blossom series. You could take a look. Shi Mingwan's Cherry Blossom series was actually 10 pieces, but the first one was ordered by the client. The remaining 9 pieces. Although the styles were different, it could be seen that they were similar designs. However, the details of each piece were handled differently. Cherry Blossom series? Chen Feifei's eyes lit up. Okay, let me take a look. Shi Mingwan brought her to try on the clothes. From the beginning to the end, she didn't glance at Zhang Hao. Chen Feifei really liked the Cherry Blossom series. She looked at the clothes and thought of one thing. Miss Shi, you said that there was only one design for each of these clothes, right? Yes. Shi Mingwan nodded. I can guarantee that there won't be a second set of these clothes. All the clothes she designed had a specially created logo with a dark pattern of song-seeking studio on it. It was inside the clothes. Then, look, although these styles are different, I can tell that they are from the same series. If I buy them and others buy them too, won't I be wearing the same clothes as others? It doesn't matter. Shi Mingwan explained patiently. This is a series to begin with. More importantly, we handle the details differently, so there won't be the problem you mentioned. Chen Feifei didn't say anything. She seemed to have thought of something. How about this? I want all 9 pieces. You're not allowed to make the same style again. I don't want to wear the same clothes as others. Okay. Shi Mingwan had nothing to say when she met such a straightforward customer. It was one thing to not like Chen Feifei. She would be a fool not to earn money. Chen Feifei tried on one of them and then went out to look for Zhang Hao. Brother Hao, you've been waiting for me for a long time, right? I've picked out the clothes. What do you think? An extremely light gradual color change, from light pink to dark pink, layer by layer. The thin silk fabric fluttered, and the dark cherry blossom patterns on it danced along with the hem of the skirt. If one looked carefully, it seemed like petals were flying. Zhang Hao glanced at the clothes, then nodded and softly grunted. What do you mean by them? Does it look good or not? Chen Feifei hooked Zhang Hao's arm with a charming face. Zhang Hao looked at her hand that was hooking his arm. He took a step back to look at the clothes and pulled her hand away without a trace. Not bad. Chun Feifei smiled and finally went to change in satisfaction. She went to change, but Shi Mengwan didn't follow. She stood there and glanced at Zhang Hao's face. There was a flash of mockery and disappointment in her eyes. She was actually thinking about working hard for 2 years. Now it seemed that she didn't need to work hard for 2 years. Zhang Hao already had a choice. Not wanting to pay attention to Zhang Hao, Shi Mengwan turned around and walked in Chun Feifei's direction. Zhang Hao's voice sounded behind her. The clothes aren't bad. The sudden 4 words made Shi Mengwan stop in her tracks. She turned around and glanced at Zhang Hao. Zhang Hao was also looking at her. He cleared his throat. When I said not bad, I meant the clothes aren't bad. After Shi Mengwan realized what he meant, the corners of her lips couldn't help but curl up. I want you to say it. If she didn't have some real ability, how could she have made Song Seeking Studio famous in Lin City in such a short period of time? The expression on her face was full of confidence and arrogance. She was beautiful to begin with, but she was charming but extraordinary, gorgeous but not seductive. Zhang Hao's eyes darkened slightly. His gaze suddenly changed. Shi Mengwan saw through his club. She lowered her head and turned to walk towards the fitting room. Chun Feifei picked out the 9 gowns and 2 pairs of shoes. Other than clothes, they also had shoes and bags for fear that customers wouldn't have the direction to match them. The price wasn't comparable to that of first-tier brands, but it wasn't something that ordinary people could afford. Shi Mengwan didn't give Chun Feifei a discount. She watched as Zhang Hao took out his card to pay. She really wanted to charge twice as much, but in the end, she decided against it. After Zhang Hao left, Xiao Ji, Xiao Qiu, and a few other designers heard about the excessive order today. The group of people were very happy. It was almost a new year. Although the studio's business was very good, who would complain about having more money? Shi Mengwan looked at her subordinates and thought about how she didn't give Chun Feifei a discount just now. She generously expressed that this year's year-end bonus would be given for 1 more month. Amidst the cheers of her subordinates, Shi Mengwan returned to the office, but her face was no longer as happy as before. She sat behind her desk and thought about the moment when Zhang Hao took out his card to pay today. She actually wanted to question him, but later, she didn't know what she could ask. Her eyes were a little swollen and sore. She took a deep breath. That moment of discomfort gave her inspiration again. She pressed the internal line and told Xiao Ji that she was going to draw. After telling him not to disturb her, Shi Mengwan began to draw. This time, she chose a blue background color. Blue represented melancholy. It was just like her current mood. She lost track of time as she drew. When she was done with the things in front of her, she went downstairs and planned to go home. However, she found Zhang Hao standing next to her car. He had an unlit cigarette in his hand. Seeing that she had come, he threw the cigarette into the trash can beside him. Shi Mengwan looked around. It was already very late. At this time, there was no one else in the business district that she was in. She didn't quite understand why Zhang Hao was here, so she went straight into the car. Just as she sat down, the car door on the other side was opened, and Zhang Hao got in. Shi Mengwan's expression didn't look too good. Zhang Hao, please get out of the car. What? You're not calling me President Zhang anymore? Previously in the studio, she had called him President Zhang. Zhang Hao's words made Shi Mengwan grit her teeth. Zhang Hao, at this time, you should be accompanying Miss Chun, right? She doesn't need me to accompany her. Yeah, she doesn't need you to accompany her, so you can't find me? Zhang Hao, can you be any more outrageous? Shi Mengwan misunderstood the meaning of his words. She couldn't help but mind Chun Feifei's existence and Zhang Hao's attitude. Without giving Zhang Hao a chance to speak, her attitude was quite cold. Get out of the car. Zhang Hao looked at her. When she was angry, her lips parted slightly. The lights in the country weren't very bright. The street lights outside shone in, causing Shi Mengwan's face to glow. He thought of her smile today. It was a different look from her current coldness, but it was still as beautiful. Get out of the car, Shi Mengwan said again. Zhang Hao moved at this moment. He reached out his hand. Just when Shi Mengwan thought that he was going to push the car door, he turned around, stretched out his long arms, and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and easily kissed her lips. The space in the car was narrow, although the handbrake of the car was between the two of them. Instead, it made their lips press even tighter. Ever since Jean Hauser left her apartment on New Year's Day, it had been almost a month since the two of them had seen each other. Sherming-Wan didn't want to admit it, but she had to. She missed Jean Hauser's kiss and his embrace. His lips, his hands, his kiss, and his touch made her body go soft. His kiss was too domineering and forceful, making her almost unable to breathe. In the almost suffocating kiss, Jean Hauser finally let go of her. Sherming-Wan panted heavily, but she almost couldn't sit still in her seat. If it weren't for the back of the chair behind her, she might have already slid down. She glared at Jean Hauser. When she met his deep black eyes, she weakly retracted her gaze. She clearly wanted to chase him away, but she always lost her mind in his kiss. This Jean Hauser was really her nemesis. No matter how unwilling Sherming-Wan was, no matter how she chased Jean Hauser out of the car, in the end, she brought Jean Hauser home again. She was so upset that she didn't notice that when she jumped up, Jean Hauser's gaze fell on her like a hungry wolf. It was filled with a predatory aura. As soon as she entered the door, Sherming-Wan's body was held in Jean Hauser's arms. He searched for her lips almost eagerly. Sherming-Wan's lips hurt from his strength. Her coat, clothes, and pants fell off one by one. They walked along the living room until the room. Sherming-Wan had just entered the door and hadn't had time to turn on the air conditioner. The moment her skin came into contact with the air, she was so cold that she shivered slightly. Chapter 665. At the same time that her body became hot, Sherming-Wan wrapped her arms around Jean Hauser's neck and looked into his eyes. She had long since discovered that Jean Hauser's eyes were darker than those of ordinary Asians. Most Asians' eyes had a hint of light brown in them, but Jean Hauser's eyes weren't. His eyes were pure black. They were like a pair of extremely beautiful obsidian eyes. Every time he was aroused, the color of his eyes would become deeper and deeper. Like a deep spring, she often couldn't help but indulge in it. Not only now, but a long time ago, she liked to look at her dear brother's eyes. She thought that he was really her calamity. She could talk and laugh freely with difficult clients, and she could face her tricky grandmother with a strong attitude. She could even play tricks and make Xiang Kaiping happy. However, she couldn't be more at ease in front of Jean Hauser. Every time she saw him, she always felt at a loss. The face in front of her overlapped with that of her dear brother. Sherming-Wan couldn't help but call him dear brother again. Jean Hauser, who was trying his best to move on her body, became more and more aroused. In the end, he bumped into her until she couldn't speak anymore. When her consciousness shattered, she naturally couldn't call out the words big brother anymore. After Sherming-Wan told Xiao Zhe about it, she felt that what Xiao Zhe said before might be true. He really had something to do, so he left early and returned late. Because after that day, Xiao Zhe returned home early every day, had dinner with her, and woke up early for breakfast together. After the first month, the temperature in Lin City slowly rose. Sherming-Wan grew a little taller. She could no longer wear her previous clothes. In the past few months, some of the clothes she wore were bought by Xiao Zhe, and some were directly picked up by her. Her mother used to know how to make clothes and was the only tailor in the town at that time. Sherming-Wan watched her mother step on the sewing machine since she was young. Not to mention that she knew how to make clothes, she still knew how to simply change clothes and hold a needle and thread. Xiao Zhe also grew very fast. After the new year, he seemed to have grown a few centimeters taller. When he grew taller, he looked even thinner. Some of the clothes in the closet, such as t-shirts, shirts, and jeans, couldn't be worn anymore. Sherming-Wan took them over and made them smaller for herself to wear. Xiao Zhe once laughed at her. "Are you planning to be a tailor when you grow up?" "No." Sherming-Wan shook her head. "I don't want to be a tailor. I want to be a fashion designer." "Isn't he a tailor?" The young man had never come into contact with it before, so he started joking. Sherming-Wan was unusually serious. "No, a tailor is a tailor, and a fashion designer is a fashion designer. I've checked both of them. This is different." The girl's eyes were clear and bright. She did not back down when talking about her dream. The youth stared at the clothes in her hands. However, he stopped mocking him. All right, it was different. I'm waiting for you to be a fashion designer. Sherman Wan's eyes curved with an obvious smile. You trust me that much. Trust me. Just by looking at the stitches she had sewn and the clothes she had changed, there was nothing wrong with them. There was nothing for him to doubt. Sherman Wan smiled, but that smile didn't last long. She thought of something else. Right now, she was hanging out with Xiao Zhe every day. She didn't go home or go to school. Being a fashion designer was just a joke. She had to at least go back and finish her studies. But when she thought of Grandma Sure and the messy things at home, she didn't want to go back. What's wrong? The youth looked at her with a pair of bright eyes. When he met the sadness in Sherman Wan's eyes, he seemed to understand something. Do you not want to stay here anymore, dear brother? Sherman Wan was shocked when she heard this. Are you trying to chase me away? If you don't want to stay, then go home. You're different from me. Sherman Wan had parents. She only ran away from home in a fit of pique with her family. Xiaoze already knew about this. Sherman Wan bit her lip and finally shook her head. I don't want to go back. If you don't go back, how are you going to school? How are you going to be your fashion designer? I don't know. After all, she was only a little over 12 years old. How could she think about so much? Dear brother, can you not chase me away? The youth wasn't moved by her words. Instead, he was very serious. You have to know that if you follow me, you might not be able to fulfill your dream. Sherman Wan's expression was conflicted. She knew in her heart that what the youth said was true. But she looked at the youth. Under the light, the youth's eyes were as dark as ink, making people drown in them. Dear brother, I won't chase you away. When the youth realized his feelings for her, how could he bear to chase her away? But you have to think clearly. If you follow me, you won't have a good life. Not to mention the current environment, just what he was going to do in the future would probably be more and more dangerous. He couldn't say it clearly, but did she really understand? I'm not afraid. Sherman Wan still hadn't realized her subtle thoughts. She only knew that she didn't want to leave her dear brother just like that. So silly. Xiaoze looked at her and felt that the girl was a little silly. Sherman Wan bit her lip and suddenly put down the t-shirt in her hand. She reached out and hugged Xiaoze. Dear brother, I want to follow you. I don't want to go back. Even if their life was actually quite hard now, even if she had nothing here, she had her dear brother. She didn't have an elder brother in the past. Although Father Sure treated her well, that feeling was different. Sure Meng Wan's slender body was soft, and there was a faint fragrance of a young girl on her body. The youth's ears quietly turned red. He almost didn't dare to look at the girl. If you don't want to go back, then don't go back. It was just a few simple words, but he said them in an exceptionally stiff manner. Sherman Wan didn't notice. She only felt that she was happy because the youth didn't chase her away. She was still too young to know why she was so happy. Sherman Wan opened her eyes and felt a hand on her waist. The blanket had slid down a lot, but she didn't feel cold. The air conditioner in the room had been turned on at some point, but she didn't notice it. Following the hand, she saw that Jean Hauser was still sleeping with his eyes closed. She thought of the dream just now. The young man's thin but strong chest. She hugged him. He was clearly still very thin and weak. He was clearly just a young man, but he gave her a full sense of security. She looked up at Jean Hauser. The feeling he gave her was still the same, but she didn't know if this feeling was only given to her or to other women. She knew that this was because she was different from him. Gently taking his hand away, Sherman Wan got up and went to the bathroom. When she left home before, Mother Sure was afraid that she wouldn't be able to take care of herself in Lin City alone, so she asked her to bring a lot of food over. Among them were dumplings and wontons that Mother Sure had personally made. They were all frozen and packaged. She told her that if she was too lazy to cook in the future, she could just cook them directly. Sherman Wan looked at it and decided to cook wontons. She was very good at doing these things, so she cooked them very quickly. When Jean Hauser came out of the room, he saw 2 sets of wontons on the table, one big and one small. Sherman Wan glanced at him. Let's eat. Her voice was very calm, without a trace of emotion. Jean Hauser sat down opposite her and looked at the wonton in front of him, which was almost twice as big as the one in front of Sherman Wan. You eat. After you eat, I have something to tell you. Shi Mingwan felt self-loathing and disgust for being immersed in Zhang Hao's embrace again. She had conflicting emotions. On one hand, she couldn't control it, but on the other hand, she felt that it was inappropriate. Being conflicted on both sides would only make things difficult for herself. When Zhang Hao heard that, he paused in his action of picking up his chopsticks. He glanced at Shi Mingwan, but she lowered her head and didn't look at him. Mother Shi's cooking skills were very good, and the wontons she made were very delicious. It was different from the one sold outside. Shi Mingwan's speed was very fast. She had the inspiration yesterday, and that feeling was still there today. She wanted to finish drawing her design in one go. After the new year, there would be a fashion design competition in France. She wanted to try it out. Although a small studio like theirs had almost no chance of winning such a competition, her teacher especially appreciated her and gave her an invitation. Behind the invitation was a design drawing. It was first sent to the other party's competition committee, and then the competition committee would pick out the shortlisted works from these works. If they were shortlisted, they would have a chance. There was still a month before the submission of the initial works for the competition. Shi Mingwan wanted to send the works that she thought of yesterday to the competition. She had something on her mind, so she ate very quickly. After finishing the wonton in front of her, she realized that Zhang Hao was still eating. She put down the bowl, sat up straight, and looked at Zhang Hao seriously. Zhang Hao, after this breakfast, don't come again. Zhang Hao raised his head and glanced at her. Shi Mingwan didn't need him to speak, nor did she need him to respond. You have Chen Feifei. I don't want to be a mistress. Everything we did before was wrong. Yes, in this matter, I admit that I also have a responsibility. But I also paid the price. You didn't suffer a loss. So let's just leave it at that. Let's end it here. There are some things that you and I both know, so let's just leave it at that. When she faced Zhang Hao, her aura was always a little weaker. She didn't want to continue like this. She needed to end such a mistake. Zhang Hao didn't speak. Instead, he listened to her. He finished the rest of the wontons. He took out a tissue and wiped the corner of his lips. I've said it before. Chen Feifei isn't my girlfriend, nor is she my fiancée. Really? Zhang Hao knew that Shi Mingwan wouldn't believe him. There were some things that he couldn't say more about. She has nothing to do with me. I just treat her as a sister. You're not a mistress. After knowing her for so long, this was the most serious explanation Zhang Hao had ever given. Shi Mingwan looked into his eyes. For a moment, she was almost willing to believe that what he said was true. But it was only for a moment. You treat her as a sister. What about her? Zhang Hao frowned. That's her business. Okay. Shi Mingwan skipped over this. Zhang Hao, you said that Chen Feifei has nothing to do with you. What about me? Seeing that Zhang Hao didn't seem to understand what she meant, she smiled. Chen Feifei has nothing to do with you, but what about me? In your heart, what am I? There was silence. Zhang Hao looked at Shi Mingwan's face as if it was very difficult for him to answer. Why aren't you saying anything? Shi Mingwan sneered and looked at the troubled expression on Zhang Hao's face. Zhang Hao, I admit that I have feelings for you, but I definitely won't let myself be a mistress, and I won't let myself become so lowly in love. I didn't mean that. He had never looked down on her. You didn't mean that? You didn't want me to be a mistress? Or do you not think of me as a prostitute? Zhang Hao frowned. I've said it before. I didn't mean that. Okay, I'll pretend that you didn't. Shi Mingwan stood up and placed her hands on the table. She leaned over and looked him in the eye. So you're serious about dating me? Zhang Hao pursed his lips into a straight line and didn't refute her words. Zhang Hao, can you marry me? Shi Mingwan leaned forward a little more and stared straight at Zhang Hao's face. She was especially serious. Zhang Hao, are you willing to marry me? Marry me. You know, after the new year, I'll be 26 years old. I also want to get married and start a family with a man. Are you willing? Zhang Hao was stunned for a moment. This time, he was really silent. Shi Mingwan seemed to know the answer. She smiled and nodded. Look, you don't want to. There was no need to say anything else. Shi Mingwan took the bowl in front of him and cleaned up the bowl in front of her. She turned around and went into the kitchen. She cleaned up the kitchen in no time. When she came out, she saw that Jean Hauser was still sitting at the dining table and hadn't moved. She didn't care. She went back to her room, changed her clothes, picked up her coat, and prepared to leave. When she walked to the door, Jean Hauser had already stood up from the dining table and walked in front of her. He didn't take any further action, but Shi Mingwan didn't mind continuing to speak more decisively. Jean Hauser, the next time I come, I'll call the police. You're considered a reputable person in Lin City now. I think you don't want to lose face, right? She picked up the car key and opened the door. More importantly, I believe that you don't want Miss Chun Fei to know, right? The moment she was about to step out, Jean Hauser suddenly reached out and grabbed her hand. Shi Mingwan was stunned for a moment. In the next second, her body was pulled into Jean Hauser's arms. He lowered his head to kiss her. She avoided him. The coat in her hand fell to the ground, and she pressed her hand tightly against his chest. Jean Hauser, don't always use this trick on me. I'm really not that cheap. Jean Hauser was stunned for a moment. He watched as she picked up the coat and keys that had fallen to the ground and carried the bag on her back. Before Jean Hauser could react, she had already stepped out of the door and left. She moved very quickly. When she walked outside, the elevator happened to arrive. She didn't care about Jean Hauser and went straight into the elevator. Jean Hauser didn't chase after her. Shi Mingwan heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt very disappointed. She already knew the answer to some things, and she also understood that there was no outcome between her and Jean Hauser. But knowing it was one thing, accepting it and slowly digesting it was another thing. Leaning against the elevator mirror wall, she told herself that it was okay. It would pass. Everything would pass. In the next few days, Jean Hauser didn't come again. Since Shi Mingwan planned to participate in the fashion design competition, she naturally had to prepare well. She told herself to temporarily put Jean Hauser at the back of her mind and focus on drawing. Occasionally, when she was free, she would go to the hospital to accompany Xiang Kaiping. The studio was already on holiday. It was different from ordinary companies. For companies like them, the orders were all processed in advance. During the New Year period, there weren't many guests. Therefore, Shi Mingwan was quite generous and allowed her subordinates to rest until after the Lantern Festival before coming to work. The New Year was in 2 days. Hua Jinyao had something to do in Rong City, so he went back to Rong City first. Su Qing-sang didn't go back because she had to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Her good friend had to take care of her mother in the hospital. Shi Mingwan thought about it and suggested that she come over to take care of Xiang Kaiping on the first day of the New Year. However, she was rejected by Su Qing-sang and Xiang Kaiping, especially Su Qing-sang. She knew that Shi Mingwan usually didn't go home much, so she wanted her to hurry home for the New Year. Shi Mingwan couldn't argue with Su Qing-sang, and Mother Shi kept calling her. In the end, she went home. The New Year in the small town was very lively. They started preparing a long time in advance. Father Shi was the eldest in the family. On New Year's Eve, Shi Mingwan's 2 uncles and an aunt would come to their house for a reunion dinner. Shi Mingwan's second uncle had 2 sons and a daughter. Shi Mingwan's third uncle also had 2 sons and a daughter. Shi Mingwan's aunt had 2 daughters and a son. In addition to her aunt, uncle, and Grandma Shi, there were 2 tables full of people in the living room. Mother Shi was cooking in the kitchen, while Shi Mingwan went into the kitchen to help. Mother Shi chased her out a few times, but she wasn't willing to go out. She would rather sit under the stove and light the fire than see the pride on her second uncle, second aunt, and third uncle's faces. Speaking of which, all these years, the 2 uncles and aunts always felt that they were superior to Mother Shi because they had sons. Shi Mingwan didn't like to be bullied. In fact, among the 3rd generation of grandchildren, be it the children of uncles or aunts, there was really no one like her who could open a studio at such a young age and earn money to buy a house. But so what? Just because she wasn't a son, no matter how well she did, she wouldn't get a good word from Grandma Shi. How ridiculous. Your grandmother is old. It's already 82 years after the New Year. If she says anything, don't take it to heart. With the incident of Shi Mingwan's return last time, Grandma Shi hadn't mentioned it again recently. She only occasionally mentioned it in a strange tone. Mother sure didn't plan to argue with her. After all, she was an elder. Got it. Shi Mingwan nodded, picked up a piece of firewood, and threw it into the stove. She looked up at Mother Shi. Mom, how about I take you to Lin City to live? What nonsense are you talking about? Mother Shi didn't answer. What do we do if we go? We're used to staying in the countryside. It's not like we haven't been to Lin City before. It's not suitable for us. When Shi Mingwan's house had just been renovated and moved in, she had also asked Father Shi and Mother Shi to stay there for a few days, but the two of them weren't used to it. Later, they came back. How is it nonsense? How is it not suitable? Look, you guys are still burning this earthen stove. How inconvenient. Everything is convenient in Lin City now. Besides, your daughter can earn money now. I'll support you guys. It's only right for you to support your parents. But I think that your parents will be happier when you bring the man you mentioned back. The sudden voice made Shi Mingwan turn around and look at the kitchen door. Grandma sure stood at the door and sneered at Shi Mingwan. One girl, you said that you wanted to find a son-in-law. It's the new year. Where's your son-in-law? Shi Mingwan's expression didn't look good. Grandma, you still know that it's the new year? She clearly knew that it was the new year, yet she still said such words. It really made people uncomfortable to hear it. Yeah, isn't it the new year to get married? You said that you want to find a son-in-law, so why don't you bring that person over? Grandma is old, so I think your memory isn't very good. Didn't you say you would give me 2 years? It hasn't even been 2 months, right? Of course, Grandma sure knew what she had said. But when she went back that day, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that she had fallen for Shi Mingwan's trick. What 2 years? She was already 82 years old. Who knew how many more days she could live? What if she died and this damn girl still hadn't brought him back? Who would care about the boss's business then? Mom, Mother sure looked at Grandma sure and was a little helpless. There's a lot of smoke in this kitchen. You should go sit outside first. Besides, it's the new year today, and Wan Wan is still helping me keep the fire lit. She's usually tired from work, so don't mention that for now. Do you think I like to mention it? Tired from work? So what if she's tired from work? Let me tell you, no matter how well a girl does, it's not as practical as finding a man to marry. Grandma sure snorted at Shi Mingwan as she spoke, then turned around and left. Mother sure knew that Shi Mingwan didn't like to hear this. She was afraid that Shi Mingwan would be unhappy, so she wanted to persuade her, but Shi Mingwan comforted her instead. Mom, don't worry. I'm not angry, and I won't argue with Grandma. It was the new year, and she would only be back for a few days. She didn't have the time to be angry with Grandma. Chapter 666. Shi Mingwan believed that even if she had met him, she wouldn't be able to get along. But with Mother Shi's attitude, she would just meet him. She would just treat it as reassuring her mother. Of course, it's just a meeting. It's not like I'm asking you to get married immediately. There's no such logic. Shi Mingwan's lips moved, but she didn't say anything else. She didn't want to say it anymore. Forget it. She would just treat it as an additional life experience. Otherwise, she hadn't even gone on a blind date before. Thinking about it this way, she wasn't so resistant anymore. Shi Mingwan didn't expect Mother Shi to be so anxious. She actually asked the man to come to her house the next day, which was the first day of the new year, to see her. Shi Mingwan was helpless and speechless. It was just that it was the new year. If he really came, she was too embarrassed to push him out. She thought about it and really didn't like such an atmosphere. She used the excuse of going to her former classmate's house for New Year's greetings to avoid it. It was one thing to agree to the blind date, but she felt that it was too hasty to meet the blind date just like that. She wasn't prepared at all. Shi Mingwan didn't have many classmates in the town. There were only 2 from junior high school. She went to the county town to study in high school. At that time, she had just returned home and felt uncomfortable staying at home. Later, she went to the county town to study in high school. She hid at her classmate's house and found that the 2 former classmates were already married and had children. They were clearly about the same age as her. One of the female classmates kept asking her when she was planning to get married. News of her had spread throughout the entire town. Father Shi was very capable when he was young. Mother Shi was also a famous tailor in the area. The couple had built a 3.5-story building in the town a long time ago. They were also one of the first to get rich. The Shi family was so famous that many people heard about Shi Mengwan's quarrel with Grandma Shi that day. Half of the people thought that Shi Mengwan was really amazing, while the other half thought that Shi Mengwan was dreaming. Which good man would agree to be your son-in-law? Would the child have to take your surname? Shi Mengwan couldn't hear the discussions of those people, so she didn't know that she had become the female lead of the rumors. When she heard her classmate ask her when she was going to get married, the first thing she thought of was Jean Hausa. Then, she thought of the blind date that was coming today. She shook her head and didn't answer the other party's question, but she couldn't stay any longer. She went to 2 more houses to pay their New Year's greetings. In the end, she kept asking similar questions. Shi Mengwan lost her patience and slowly headed home. When he got home, the guests had already left. Mother Shi's eyes were a little complicated, but she didn't blame him much. She probably knew that her daughter had a knot in her heart. When she came back, her daughter ran out every day, wholeheartedly wanting to find that big brother. Putting aside the fact that she couldn't find him under such circumstances, even if she found him, Mother Shi wouldn't agree to Shi Mengwan being with that boy. It was said that he didn't go to school and didn't have proper parents. No one knew what he was doing outside every day. But after so many years, even if his daughter didn't mention it, she probably still remembered it in her heart. Wan, Mother Shi really wanted to persuade her. I've seen the person who came today. He was a nice person. He was the 3rd child in the family. This was a gift left behind by the other party. I knew you weren't home, so I didn't say anything. I only said that I could meet you again when I got to Lin City. Oh, Mother Shi took out her phone and sent a phone number to Shi Mengwan. This is the other party's phone number. He said he would contact you when he returned to Lin City. Don't blame me for giving him his phone number. Also, he said that his Weibo signal is also this. He said that if you're willing, you can add his Weibo message first and chat first. Mom. Shi Mengwan was a little impatient. When she met her mother's gaze, she forced herself to be patient and memorize the number. Okay, I got it. I think Xiao Qi is really not bad. Think about it. Mother Shi gave a very serious suggestion. Shi Mengwan couldn't refuse her mother's kindness, so she copied down the other party's phone number. Shi Mengwan didn't stay at home for long. After staying for 3 days, she returned to Lin City. Firstly, she still wanted to go back to the studio to finish the rest of the work. Secondly, she still wanted to see Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping was still hospitalized during the New Year. The first thing she did when she returned to Lin City was to see Xiang Kaiping. She was in good spirits and didn't seem to be affected by the injury at all. She saw that Su Qingseng and Xiang Kaiping had a very good relationship. She also took good care of her. She was really happy for Su Qingseng. After having Xiang Kaiping, Su Qingseng was finally no longer a child without a mother. When she came out of the hospital, the weather was good. Shi Mengwan unexpectedly received a call from Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi was the blind date man. Shi Mengwan held the phone. The other party's voice sounded very gentle. Miss Shi, our company hasn't started work yet. I heard that you've already come to Lin City. When you think it's convenient for you to come out and meet him in the next 2 days. The other party went straight to the point and didn't beat around the bush. Shi Mengwan thought for a moment and agreed to the other party's request to meet. The time was set for tonight. Xiao Qi knew how to set the mood and booked the dinner venue at a Western restaurant that had just opened. Shi Mengwan looked at the address. It was very close to where she lived. Mother Shi might have told Xiao Qi where she lived, but no matter what, if the other party had specially asked about it, it was considered thoughtful. She didn't have any resistance at first, but now it was a little less. It was still early, so Shi Mengwan didn't go home to change her clothes. She went to the studio and made a plan for the new year. She also revised her previous draft. After she was done, she realized that there were less than 15 minutes left to eat. She rushed, but when she arrived at the restaurant, she realized that she was still late. She took out her phone and was about to make a call when Xiao Qi sent her a location and a photo. The location was the restaurant he was currently at, telling her that he had arrived. The photo was the restaurant signboard. Below it were Xiao Qi's location, and there was also a selfie of him. This was the first time Shi Mengwan had seen this man. He looked gentle, and he seemed to be a very good-natured person. Shi Mengwan looked at the time. The other party had arrived a full 15 minutes earlier than her. She was a little embarrassed. She hurried into the restaurant and found a seat. Xiao-Qi was already sitting in his seat with his phone in his hand. The moment he saw Shi Mengwan coming over, he stood up. He sized up Shi Mengwan, and there was an obvious flash of surprise in his eyes. I was just wondering if the photo I sent was too ugly, so you were so scared that you didn't want to appear. Shi Mengwan giggled. This Xiao-Qi was a little interesting. How could that be? You should be thinking if it's because the photo you sent is too handsome that I feel ashamed of my inferiority, so I don't dare to appear. This time, it was Xiao-Qi's turn to smile. He reached out his hand to Shi Mengwan. Hello, I'm Xiao-Qi. Hello, I'm Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan smiled and reached out her hand to him. This man might not be so repulsive. He walked out of his seat and pulled out a chair for Shi Mengwan. He returned to his seat and sat down, pouring Shi Mengwan a glass of lemonade on the table. Sorry, I haven't ordered anything yet. I don't know what you like to eat, so I can only wait for you to come. It's okay. I'm not picky. What Shi Mengwan said was true. After more than a year of wandering, she really ate everything. Other than a few foods that she didn't like, she really ate whatever she had. Xiao-Qi called the waiter over and asked Shi Mengwan for her opinion. He ordered 2 identical steaks for the 2 of them. Miss Shi, what drink do you want? As he spoke, he smiled. If you like to drink, you can also have a bottle. However, I saw that you drove here, so you should drink a drink. I'll just drink juice. Shi Mengwan felt that this Xiao-Qi was really a good person. He was very thoughtful. After Xiao-Qi finished ordering, he returned the menu to the waiter. After the waiter left, he smiled. All right, even if you want to drink today, I won't order it. Why? I don't know how good your alcohol tolerance is. I'm afraid that you'll think that I deliberately forced you to drink. When the time comes, it'll be a little hard to explain. Shi Mengwan really smiled this time. My alcohol tolerance really isn't good. More importantly, it was really inappropriate for only the 2 of them to drink now. Xiao-Qi nodded and looked at Shi Mengwan. Suddenly, his expression turned serious. I'm sorry. Did I scare you by coming here rashly? Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed. Just as she was about to explain, Xiao-Qi raised his hand. I was too rash. At that time, my mother asked me to go take a look, so I didn't think too much about it. I didn't expect it to cause you trouble and cause you to return to Lin City so early. It's none of your business. Shi Mengwan shook her head. I came back for something. That's good. Xiao-Qi looked at her and confirmed that she really wasn't angry. I've already heard about your situation. I'll tell you about mine. I'm 29 years old this year. I'm currently working in a technology company. I'm currently the manager of the research and development department. At this point, he paused for a moment. Of course, this achievement is nothing compared to you setting up a studio at such a young age. There's no such thing. Shi Mengwan shook her head. I'm just lucky. She said this sincerely. Not long after she graduated, she set up her own studio. In addition to her own efforts, she also received help from her teacher and Su Qingsang. However, Xiao-Qi was already a manager at such a young age, so he relied entirely on himself. Are we going to praise each other? Xiao-Qi's teasing words made Shi Mengwan laugh, and she stopped arguing. I'm the 3rd child of my family. My eldest brother and second brother are already married and have children. I'm the only one in my family who's still single. At this point, Xiao-Qi picked up the cup in front of him and took a sip. My parents have always wanted me to get married, but I didn't have this idea before. On one hand, I still want to work hard in our company. On the other hand, I had a girlfriend before. Because it was a long-distance relationship, distance and time made it impossible for us to maintain in the end. So I really didn't have this idea before. I know that Miss Shi is a new woman, but I feel that for a blind date like us, if possible, it's better to explain everything clearly. That would be better, don't you think? You're right. Shi Mengwan nodded. You're still thinking about your ex-girlfriend, so no. Xiao-Qi waved his hand. That part of it is already in the past. I'm telling you that I'm serious. I want to start a new relationship. So, I'm dating you on the premise of getting married. As for the conditions your family proposed, I don't disagree. Both of my brothers have sons. My parents have already said that I just need to be happy on my own. Xiao-Qi's voice was neither fast nor slow, and his tone was as calm as usual. He was quite frank. He explained his situation clearly the moment he arrived. Seeing him like this, Shi Mingwan didn't know what to say. "Miss Shi, do you not believe that I can do it?" Xiao Qi put down the cup in his hand. "Don't worry. Since I've agreed, I won't go back on my word. That's not what I meant." Shi Mingwan bit her lip, and a trace of hesitation flashed across her face. "What I mean is that I basically understand your situation, but I might have to tell you about my situation." "Go ahead." "I'm 26 years old this year, and I have my own studio." Shi Mingwan thought about what to say next. "Before President John?" Xiao Qi exclaimed. His voice interrupted Shi Mingwan's words. The word President John made Shi Mingwan's heart skip a beat. The moment Xiao Qi stood up, she turned around and looked behind her. When she saw the person who came, Shi Mingwan's heart skipped a beat. "President John." Xiao Qi walked out from his seat and greeted John Hauser. "What a coincidence. I didn't expect to meet you here." "Yes, Manager Xiao is here too. It's indeed a coincidence." John Hauser's voice was indifferent. He glanced at Xiao Qi, and his gaze seemed to sweep across Shi Mingwan without a trace. "Eating with your girlfriend?" "Not for the time being." Xiao Qi, who had been talking confidently just now, smiled shyly. "But I hope it will be in the future." As he spoke, he glanced at Shi Mingwan. "Mingwan, this is our company's John Hauser, President John." "President John, this is my friend Shi Mingwan." "Hello, Miss Shi." John Hauser looked at Shi Mingwan and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mingwan sat there, her heart beating very fast. She had to use all of her self-control to prevent herself from revealing any clues. When she met Xiao Qi's gaze, she forced herself to stand up and reached out her hand to John Hauser. "Hello, President John." She felt John Hauser's hand pinch her hand so hard that she felt a little pain. Fortunately, he quickly let go. Shi Mingwan's hand hurt. She quietly placed her hand on her body, gently clenched her fist, and then relaxed. Xiao Qi didn't notice her small movements, but John Hauser did. His gaze swept over the two of them. "Are you guys on a date?" At this moment, no one could tell the emotions in his pitch-black eyes. His voice was also indifferent, but Shi Mingwan could hear a storm brewing in his voice. "Yes." Xiao Qi admitted it openly and looked at John Hauser. "Is President John alone? Do you want to join us?" This sudden invitation made Shi Mingwan widen her eyes and look at Xiao Qi. Was he crazy? "No need. Your girlfriend will be unhappy." John Hauser's voice was still indifferent. Xiao Qi suddenly remembered that he was on a blind date with Shi Mingwan. How could he let his boss sit down on a blind date? "Then, I have an appointment with a friend. I'll go see if he's here." "Then please." John Hauser nodded slightly and glanced at Shi Mingwan. Finally, his gaze returned to Xiao Qi. "Put today's expenses on my account." "No need, President John. How can I accept it?" "It doesn't matter." After John Hauser said this, he turned around and left. He didn't look at Shi Mingwan again. Shi Mingwan felt her legs go soft. After John Hauser left, she sat down on the chair. Her face was a little pale. "Mingwan?" Xiao Qi called her and smiled first. "I'm sorry. I called you by your name without your consent. It's mainly because I think it's weird to call you Miss Shi." "It's okay." Shi Mingwan didn't take this matter to heart. "We're all young people. There's no need to be so particular. Then you could just call me by my name." "Okay." Shi Mingwan answered casually and picked up the water on the table and drank it in one gulp. However, she felt that not only was the frustration in her heart not suppressed, but it was also getting more and more intense. "I'm sorry, I just invited President John to dinner like that. Please don't mind. I especially admire him." Xiao Qi's eyes lit up. Shi Mingwan had been entangled with John Hauser until now. She had always known that his current achievements might not be low, but she really didn't know what he did. "You said he's your boss? He looks quite young." "Yeah. Our boss isn't even 30 this year. He's very powerful. When he was in university, he invested in a piece of software. That piece of software earned him his first bucket of gold." "No. In fact, I heard that his first bucket of gold was earned through investing in funds. Later, he invested in our company's first software. At that time, no one wanted that software, but he had a good eye for heroes and bought it at a high price. His entrepreneurial story is a legend in Lin City." Really? Shi Mingwan poured herself a glass of water and drank it to hide her loss of composure. I really can't tell. Yeah, not only does he invest in technology companies now, but he also invests in some new energy industries. But what's even more praiseworthy is probably his devotion. Devotion? Shi Mingwan didn't seem to understand. She looked at Xiao Qi. What do you mean? Have you heard of the Qin family? Although they aren't as powerful as the Li family and the Su family in Lin City, the Qin family isn't ordinary either. It's said that Miss Chun is indebted to President Zhang. That's why he's been guarding Miss Chun for so many years. If nothing unexpected happens, they'll be engaged this year. Xiao Qi looked in the direction where Zhang Hauze disappeared. Do you know? President Zhang has a company under his name to work on, but his workplace is still in the Qin Corporation. Doesn't this mean that he values friendship? Shi Mingwan couldn't tell what she was feeling. She bit her lip and clenched her fists under the table to prevent herself from revealing any emotions. He's really a loyal person. Her voice was very soft, and it sounded like she was sighing. Xiao Qi looked at her and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. You probably don't like to hear this, right? I'm just too happy to see President Zhang. After all, we don't usually see him every day. It's okay. Shi Mingwan shook her head. Xiao Qi wanted to say something, but the waiter had already started to serve the food. Shi Mingwan fell silent as she picked up the knife and fork. She had never asked Zhang Hauze what he had been doing all these years. What was he doing? In the past, she felt that even if she asked, Zhang Hauze might not tell her. Later on, she didn't want to ask anymore. If he was willing one day, he would naturally tell her. But she had never thought that one day she would get all the news about him through someone else's mouth. She thought of Xiao Qi's words just now. Was he deeply in love with Miss Chun? Maybe it was true. Shi Mingwan didn't know what to eat during this meal. Xiao Qi said something else in the middle, but she only responded with a few random words. Until her phone rang. It was Mother Shi who was worried and called to remind her to remember to meet Xiao Qi. After hanging up the phone and not seeing Zhang Hauze again, Shi Mingwan heaved a sigh of relief. When facing Xiao Qi, her attitude finally returned to normal. Mingwan, do you have any other plans later? No. After Shi Mingwan answered, she remembered that she actually wanted to go home and rest. Since that's the case, why don't we go watch a movie? Xiao Qi said tentatively, during the new year, there are a few movies that look good. Why don't we go take a look? Sure. Since she had already said it, Shi Mingwan had no reason to refuse. Moreover, it had indeed been a long time since she went to the movies. In the past, when Su Qingsang was free, she would follow Su Qingsang to watch it. However, recently, Su Qingsang was in a car accident, so Su Qingsang wasn't in the mood to go out to the party. Then let's go watch a movie. Xiao Qi looked very happy. It was obvious that he was satisfied with today's blind date. Let's go. Xiao Qi brought Shi Mingwan outside. When she was about to pay the bill, she was told that Zhang Hauze had already paid for it. Shi Mingwan didn't even see when he left. Her heart beat faster again. What did Zhang Hauze mean? She told herself that it might be because Xiao Qi was his subordinate. But deep in her heart, she knew that wasn't the case. However, she could only force herself to divert her attention and not think about Zhang Hauze. Instead, she focused on Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi chose this restaurant because there was a cinema nearby. He suggested that since they were too full at night, they might as well walk there. Shi Mingwan didn't object. When they arrived at the cinema, Xiao Qi asked Shi Mingwan which movie she wanted. Shi Mingwan didn't know either. She saw that there were so many people in the cinema. It was the new year, and the cinema was full. I'm afraid we can't buy tickets, right? At this moment, Xiao Qi took out his phone and waved it in front of her. I've already bought them. He said that he was worried that Shi Mingwan wouldn't be able to choose, so he even bought all the tickets for the 4 movies that were playing at this time. Shi Mingwan looked at Xiao Qi. She couldn't tell what she felt. This person was really attentive. In the end, the two of them chose a war movie that had a pretty good reputation to watch. The movie was a little noisy. From the beginning to the end, there were gunshots. Xiao Qi was very engrossed in watching. Shi Mingwan was originally a little absent-minded, but she could only let herself be engrossed in the movie. Who knew that halfway through the movie, her right hand would be held by someone? Chapter 667. The movie was a war movie. The sound of gunshots and bombardment filled the entire theater. Shi Mingwan subconsciously turned to look at Xiao-Qi. He was very engrossed in the movie. She turned her gaze to look at Zhang Haoze without a trace. He was staring at the screen in front of him, as if he was focused on watching a movie. Shi Mingwan gritted her teeth and gently exerted force with her hand, wanting to pull it back. But his grip was so tight that she couldn't pull it back. If it weren't for the fact that the occasion wasn't right, she would have exploded. Just as she was about to lose control, Zhang Haoze's hand finally let go of her. Shi Mingwan heaved a sigh of relief. She forced herself to focus on the screen, but that person's hand moved to her leg. The sudden touch on her thigh almost made Shi Mingwan jump up from her chair. She held back. She could hold back from jumping up, but she couldn't hold back the hand on her leg. Lin City was very cold in the first month. She wore a red woolen coat when she went out. However, the air conditioning in the theater was on. She felt hot not long after she sat down, so she took off her coat and placed it on her lap. The coat was very big. Zhang Haoze's hand was touching her leg, but he didn't have to worry about anyone seeing it, because it was covered by the coat. Shi Mingwan couldn't put on the coat yet. She could only put her hand into the coat and grab his hand. However, Zhang Haoze held her hand. Not only that, but his hand also began to move towards the direction of her leg. Shi Mingwan's face was red. Half of it was angry, and the other half was embarrassed. She didn't expect Zhang Haoze to be so bold. This was a movie theater. There were so many people around. Not only were there people all around, but Xiao-Qi was sitting next to her. She put her other hand under the coat and wanted to grab his hand with both hands. Zhang Haoze let her grab his hand. As she heaved a sigh of relief, he struggled slightly. Shi Mingwan gritted her teeth. She couldn't pay attention to the movie at all. Her mind was filled with the hand that was messing around on her body. She was so angry that she reached out and pinched the back of Zhang Haoze's hand tightly. However, to him, her strength was like scratching an itch. No matter how much strength she used to pinch him, he refused to retract his hand. His actions made Shi Mingwan feel like her face was burning and her body was very hot. His heartbeat was out of control, half out of fear, half out of shame. She didn't expect that Zhang Haoze would really dare to mess around like this. She tried to grab his hand again, but his hand was pressed between her legs instead. Shi Mingwan's eyes were red. If it weren't for the fact that the occasion wasn't right, she would have screamed. She stabilized her body, and when the next gunshot sounded, she leaned a little in the direction of Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze let go. Zhang Haoze didn't let go. Although they were separated by pants, it still made Shi Mingwan feel extremely ashamed. She lowered her voice, but she couldn't suppress her anger. Don't go too far. Zhang Haoze's movements stopped for a moment, but he did not withdraw his hand. You leave with me. Zhang Haoze's voice was drowned out by the gunshot. He stuck close to Shi Mingwan's ear. Only they could hear each other's voices clearly. If you don't want me to do more, then come out with me. His breath was slightly warm, and his voice was so low that it was almost a whisper. The theater was clearly very noisy, but she could hear it very clearly. No, she answered with some difficulty. She had agreed to go on a blind date with Xiao-Qi, so she couldn't stand him up just like that. Zhang Haoze's gaze was still on the movie screen, but his hand began to move towards the zipper of her pants. Although Lin City was cold, Shi Mingwan had never liked to wear too thick clothes. She was wearing a pair of casual pants today, which weren't thick. As soon as his hand pulled open the zipper, it had already touched her lower abdomen. His fingertips were slightly warm, slender, and had a thin layer of calluses. He was very clear about the sensitive spots on her body, such as her navel. When his hand circled around her navel twice and wanted to go down again, Shi Mingwan was terrified. She grabbed his hand, and her face turned pale from panic. Zhang Haoze. She looked at him, then at Xiao-Qi. At this moment, she couldn't help but be glad that she had chosen this war movie. There were constant scenes of fighting, causing all of Xiao-Qi's attention to be on the screen. Zhang Haoze was unmoved, and his fingers slid down again. Her voice was trembling. If that hand went down a little more, it would be. She gritted her teeth and pressed down on his hand, but she didn't know that this would increase the area where his hand came into contact with her. Meng let go of his hand. She was simply afraid of him. I'll go with you. You go out first. Jean House's movements finally stopped. He was still watching the movie, but he slowly pulled his hand out. He did it on purpose. He could have pulled his hand out in a second, but he had to pull it out bit by bit. Mengwan's face was burning, and she felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. Jean House's hand suddenly stopped. He placed his hand under her abdomen and moved his face close to hers. 5 minutes. As he spoke, he finally pulled his hand out. Mengwan's legs went soft. She felt him quietly get up and leave. She felt weak all over and couldn't even stand up. She turned around and glanced at Xiao Qi. He was so engrossed in watching that he didn't notice her and Jean House's movements at all. She rested for nearly 3 minutes before her body recovered a little strength. She zipped up her zipper again, but it took her a long time to do it. She felt ashamed. She closed her eyes and calmed down. At this time, the movie finally reached a relatively calm scene. She approached Xiao Qi. I'm going to the bathroom. Only then did Xiao Qi turn around and look at her. Okay. Mengwan looked at him and felt a little apologetic. The other party was being honest, but she, gritting her teeth, she picked up her bag and coat and quietly left. When she walked out of the theater, her phone rang. 5 minutes are up. Looking at the words displayed on it, she turned around and searched around. She didn't see Jean House, and her phone rang again. I'll give you 1 minute. Come to the parking lot. Mengwan gripped her phone tightly and started to walk towards the parking lot. The theater parking lot was very big. She took a look and didn't see Jean House. She closed her eyes and wanted to turn around and leave. A black Maybach quietly stopped beside her. Inside the car window was Jean House's expressionless face. Get in the car. Mengwan stood there and didn't move. Jean House, I thought we had made things clear. I said get in the car. Mengwan stood still. You have no right to ruin my life. Jean House, please understand. Don't make me say it a third time. It was still the first month, and the cold wind was blowing under the parking lot. Mengwan stood there and refused to get in the car. Jean House stared at her face for a while and suddenly got out of the car. Before Mengwan could react, he had already walked in front of her. She had just come out of the elevator and was standing next to a pillar. Jean House took 2 steps forward, and she took 2 steps back. Her back was pressed against the pillar. This sudden question made Mengwan unable to react for a few seconds. After realizing what Jean House was asking, her little face flushed red. Pervert, you like it, don't you? Jean House moved forward again. He raised his big hand and pinched her chin with his thumb and index finger. Do you believe that I'll continue here? Are you crazy? Mengwan wanted to break free from his hand. At this moment, Jean House moved his body forward a little and easily pressed her body against the wall. Or, do you prefer to go back to the theater and continue? He leaned close to her face and placed his other hand on her waist without any hesitation. He easily placed his hand on the hem of her sweater. As long as he reached inside a little more, he could untie her pants. Do you want to continue? Mengwan shook her head quickly. Her eyes were red. In terms of being a hooligan and shameless, she was definitely no match for Jean House. However, Jean House didn't retract his hand. He tilted his head and kissed her lips. His other hand gently brushed along the edge of her pants. Mengwan's body trembled. She couldn't even make a sound after being kissed by him. His hand didn't go any further. He only used an extremely slow speed to slowly stroke her waist. Her legs felt weak, and she almost couldn't stand. When Jean House ended the kiss, her body had already completely softened. He quickly hugged her. He carried her horizontally, turned around, and put her in the car. A movie in the theater was starting to end, and she saw someone get out. Jean House left the parking lot before there were more people. Mengwan spent more time than before to get her heartbeat and breathing back to normal. She looked at Jean House, who was focused on driving, and thought that she had left Xiao Qi in the theater. She took out her phone and sent a message to Xiao Qi, saying that she had something urgent to attend to and had to leave first. Shi Mingwan was still thinking about how to explain to Xiao Qi when her phone was taken away. Zhang Haoze took her phone away and put it into his suit pocket. Ew. Zhang Haoze turned around and glanced at her. He stepped on the accelerator and the car sped up. Shi Mingwan didn't fasten her seatbelt just now, so she was shocked by his actions. She didn't have the time to care about her phone and quickly fastened her seatbelt. Zhang Haoze's car sped out of the city in the night. Shi Mingwan didn't know where he was taking her. She resisted the urge to ask. She had no idea what he wanted to do now, and in fact, she didn't want to know. She only knew that things between her and him were no longer clear. Zhang Haoze turned the car around and drove back. The car stopped at Shi Mingwan's apartment. Shi Mingwan picked up her bag and got out of the car. Zhang Haoze followed behind her. Neither of them spoke, nor did they open their mouths. They were silent all the way. She walked in front, and he was half a step behind her. They walked all the way into the apartment. When they reached the elevator, Shi Mingwan's phone rang. The movie had ended. Xiao Qi couldn't find her. Zhang Haoze took out her phone and glanced at it. When she wanted to reach out to snatch it, he pressed down on her phone. Zhang Haoze took a step to the side and pressed her body against the wall. What about me? Do you want me to answer this call for you? Crazy. How could she dare to let Zhang Haoze answer the phone for her? Shi Mingwan was extremely angry and reached out her hand at him. Return the phone to me. Zhang Haoze glanced at her. With a swipe of his long finger, he pressed it and directly turned off her phone. This person was simply a robber. Shi Mingwan turned around and didn't look at him at all. She pressed the elevator button. After the elevator arrived, she quickly entered. There were surveillance cameras in the elevator, so Zhang Haoze didn't go too far. She went upstairs and opened the door. Shi Mingwan wanted to close the door before Zhang Haoze came in, but her movements couldn't be faster than Zhang Haoze's. She put her bag aside and reached out to push Zhang Haoze. He easily restrained her hands, kicked with his long legs, and easily closed the door. In the next second, her body was pressed against the door by him. All the movements were done in one go. Shi Mingwan gritted her teeth. She raised her foot and kicked at Zhang Haoze's lower body. Her movements were too ridiculous. Zhang Haoze easily blocked her foot, then stretched out his right foot and stuck it between her legs. Shi Mingwan couldn't even kick him now, nor could she resist. Her face was full of red. Zhang Haoze, let go of me. Let go of you and let you go on a blind date with another man. Can I? Shi Mingwan was furious. Who are you to me? Why do you have to do whatever you want? Do you think I don't have a temper? Her bright red lips opened and closed as she spoke rather impolitely. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes slightly and grabbed her hands with his big hands. One of his hands unceremoniously wrapped around her waist and pulled her body into his embrace. He lowered his head and kissed her lips again. He kissed her very hard, and that strength was enough to make her lips feel pain. She was so angry that she opened her mouth to bite him. But before she could, he forcefully bit down on her lips. Shi Mingwan was in pain, but Zhang Haoze took this opportunity to successfully sneak in. In terms of methods, 10 Shi Mingwans weren't Zhang Haoze's match. She could only watch helplessly as he robbed her of her breath and took the initiative. She could even feel the taste of blood in her mouth. He actually bit her lips until they bled. He was simply a lunatic. She was so angry that she bit him back. She used a lot of force this time. She could feel that his lips had been bitten by her. The taste of blood in his mouth became stronger. She didn't know if it was his blood or hers. This was simply a battle. No one was willing to back down first, and no one was willing to admit defeat. Shi Mingwan was a woman after all. She quickly lost. When she was almost suffocated by his kiss, her legs started to go soft, and she couldn't stand at all. He easily grabbed her waist and let her stand firm. At the same time, he finally let go of her, as if he was kind enough to let her go. He hugged her waist and pressed his forehead against hers. There was blood at the corner of their mouths. Shi Mingwan's breathing was very heavy and urgent. She glared at him and didn't have the strength to struggle. Even if she struggled, he wouldn't let go of her. Chapter 668. Zhang Haoze happened to have his head lowered, and she bumped into Zhang Haoze's forehead. He was fine, but she couldn't stand the pain. Not only was it painful, but she was also dizzy. She couldn't stand steadily anymore. Her feet were soft. Jean Hauser looked at her. Her forehead was already red. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she actually saw a faint smile in Jean Hauser's eyes. Crazy. She retreated her head and was so angry that she wanted to bump into him again. However, he easily avoided it and turned her body so that her back was facing him. Let go of me. Sherman Wan's movements failed. After this, she felt more and more dizzy. Jean Hauser suddenly hugged her by the waist and carried her to the room. Sherman Wan was already very dizzy, and her head was even dizzier now that he was upside down. When her body was thrown onto the bed by him, the soft Simmons made her body bounce twice. Before she could get up, he had already pressed down on her. Jean Hauser, go away. Her voice was a little hoarse. Before she could finish, he had already taken off her coat. He threw it on the ground beside him, and then the sweater. The sweater was a pullover, so he couldn't take it off at once. When he took it off, she pulled the hem with all her might. A good piece of clothing was torn out of shape. Sherman Wan's hands were so tight that they turned white. Seeing this, Jean Hauser easily grabbed her hand and raised it above his head. Just as she was about to tear him apart, he tore off the tie around his neck and easily tied her hands. He was very strong. She didn't know how he did it, but her expensive sweater was actually torn apart by him. Pervert, Sherman Wan cursed. Jean Hauser sneered and stared at her face, which was red from anger. Pervert? I should let you see what a real pervert is. Sherman Wan watched as he tied her hands to the bed and became afraid. Jean Hauser, let go of me. Don't do this. Jean Hauser was unmoved. He lowered his head and bit her lips hard. When she was in pain, he retreated a little. His lips landed on her cheek, bit by bit, and finally moved to her ear. Didn't you call me a pervert? Today, I will show you how perverted I am. Sherman Wan still wanted to scold him, but soon she realized that she couldn't. 5,000 words are omitted below. Please fantasize by yourself. Sherman Wan's eyes widened as she lay on the bed. There wasn't a single part of her body that wasn't sore, and there wasn't a single part that wasn't uncomfortable. This feeling was even more unbearable than the first time. His body was like a disassembled building block. It was difficult for him to even lift his hand. The bedsheet beneath him was already a mess. She felt terrible, but she couldn't even move to the bathroom. The man beside her had already gotten up and gone to the bathroom. Soon, she heard the sound of water. She tried to turn over, but found that even such a simple movement made her waist very uncomfortable. Pervert. Sherman Wan gritted her teeth and gave up on getting up. Footsteps sounded behind her. She closed her eyes and refused to pay any attention to the bastard behind her. But at this moment, his body was carried by someone. Jean Hauser. The moment Sherman Wan said it, she realized how hoarse her voice was. That's enough. She couldn't come again. Jean Hauser directly carried her into the bathroom. He turned on the shower and placed her under the shower. The warm water washed over her body, and she felt much more comfortable. The most important thing was that she really didn't have any strength now. If he didn't carry her to wash like this, she might not have the strength to stand firmly. But, Jean Hauser, what are your hands doing? Helping you shower. He answered expressionlessly, sounding very serious. Nonsense. Sherman Wan pushed his hand away. I'll shower myself. Are you sure you have the strength? The hidden mockery in that voice made her angry. She tried her best to stand firmly, but she almost fell. He easily lifted her waist and held her steady. At the same time, he successfully made her body completely lean on him. Sherman Wan was embarrassed and angry. Without waiting for her to completely stand firm, he lifted her body again. Jean Hauser. Sherman Wan was frightened, and her voice sounded pitiful. Just once. Sherman Wan only realized after a long time that she was happy too early. This time, it wasn't just once. It was clearly many times. The next day was the 5th day of the new year. Sherman Wan spent it in bed. On the 6th day of the new year, she still tried it on the bed. Until the 7th day of the new year. For 3 whole days, other than eating and going to the toilet, Sherman Wan bathed. After showering, she spent the rest of the time on the bed that she had custom-made for comfort. Jean Hausa was like a madman. For the past 3 days, other than eating and sleeping, he hadn't stopped. Sherming Wan had already given up struggling and resisting. The alarm clock rang. It was set by Sherming Wan before. Other people could go to work after the 15th day of the first month, but she couldn't. But now, it was very difficult for her to think about it. As soon as the blanket was lifted, she could see the marks on her body. She gritted her teeth and cursed Jean Hausa in her heart again. Then, she gave up on getting up. She closed her eyes and forced herself to ignore the feeling in her body. She didn't even dare to say that Jean Hausa had forced her. After all, if she said that he had forced her, Jean Hausa had many ways to make her willing. He had indeed done it. He had used all means to make her beg for mercy. Sherming Wan shook off the images in her mind. Any image that came to mind made her feel ashamed. Sherming Wan reached out to look for her phone. Her phone had been turned off by Jean Hausa for the past few days. She turned on her phone. There were countless text messages and dozens of missed calls. Other than one from Su Qing-sang, the rest were all from her family and Xiao Qi. It didn't matter if Sherming Wan didn't return Su Qing-sang's call for the time being. However, she couldn't ignore Mother Shi's call. Just as she was about to call Mother Shi, she remembered her current state. In her current state, her mother would definitely be able to tell that something was wrong if she spoke. She thought about it and decided to contact her family later. It didn't matter if Mother Shi called later, but looking at the dozen or so calls and text messages from Xiao Qi. After thinking for a while, Sherming Wan called him back. Xiao Qi. As soon as she called, Sherming Wan realized that something was wrong. Is it Meng Wan? Xiao Qi picked up the phone almost immediately. Are you okay? I'm fine. Sherming Wan tried her best to make her voice sound normal. Unfortunately, she had been screaming too hard these past few days, and her voice was almost hoarse. Your voice doesn't sound good. Are you really okay? I'm fine. Sherming Wan shook her head and swallowed her saliva. I'm really fine. I might just have a cold. So, have you been sick these past few days? Xiao Qi's words made Sherming Wan not know how to reply. She paused for a while and cleared her throat. Yes, I felt sick when I came back that day. Because she was lying, she felt especially guilty when she said this. Xiao Qi didn't hear it, but he heard her weakness. Is it very serious? How are you now? Have you taken your medicine? I heard that your voice is very hoarse. Do you cough? Do you need me to take you to the doctor? The series of words of concern touched Sherming Wan a little, but she was only touched. No need. I've taken my medicine. I might be fine in 2 days. Sorry, I was rude. Xiao Qi's voice on the other end of the phone softened. If you don't want me to see you, then I'll call an ambulance for you. Your voice really doesn't sound right. There's really no need. Sherming Wan shook her head. After realizing that the other party couldn't see her, she tried to raise her voice. I probably haven't been sick for a long time, so I can't take the sudden cold. I've taken my medicine. I'll be fine after a nap. But you should have been sick for a few days, right? Xiao Qi paused. Do you know? I couldn't get through to you these past few days, so I thought you didn't want to see me. Xiao Qi, I think you ran away halfway through the movie that day. I thought I wasn't your ideal type. You're going to reject me in this way. That's not what I meant. Xiao Qi was indeed not her ideal type, but she didn't want to hurt him. I'm sorry, Xiao Qi. I really had something to do that day. You mean I still have a chance, right? Xiao Qi. Sherming Wan didn't want to lie to him. She knew very well that Jean Hausa had left and returned, and she was entangled with him again. She didn't have the right to develop a relationship with Xiao Qi now. It's okay. If you're not ready, I can give you time. Sherming Wan didn't know what to say. Do you know? I've seen you before. Xiao Qi's voice stunned Sherming Wan. She had no impression of him. Speaking of which, you're considered a celebrity in our town. I've seen you before. Xiao Qi sighed on the other end of the phone. I knew you'd forgotten about me, but I've never forgotten about you. Xiao Qi. Sherming Wan couldn't answer him. All right, I'm not trying to burden you. Take care of your health. I'll ask you out when you're better, okay? Sherming Wan was still thinking about how to reject Xiao Qi when a big hand suddenly appeared on her waist. She was shocked. If it weren't for Xiao Qi on the other end of the phone, she might have already screamed. Even so, she sucked in a breath of cold air. What's wrong? Xiaoqi could tell that something was wrong with her voice. Don't tell me you're not even willing to give me such a chance. No. Sherman Wan's body was lifted up by Zhang Haoze, and he easily held her in his arms. She wasn't wearing clothes, but he was. His hand was holding her waist, and at this moment his big hand was moving down her waist. You. She glared at Zhang Haoze, her eyes full of accusation. Then you're willing to give me this chance? Zhang Haoze was unmoved. He turned his face and kissed her cheek. She didn't know where he had gone this morning. His lips were very cold. Sherman Wan grabbed his hand with her hand to prevent him from doing anything rash. At the same time, she had to divert her attention to listen to Xiaoqi's phone call. Xiaoqi, I'm very sleepy. I want to sleep. It's okay. I said that I'll contact you when you're better. Xiaoqi's voice sounded cheerful. Sherman Wan responded randomly. She thought that the other party was going to hang up, but Xiaoqi added, You didn't let me come to see you, so you wasted a chance for me to be attentive. Sherman Wan was stunned for a moment. Xiaoqi smiled on the other side of the phone. I'm not lying to you. My cooking skills are not bad. Now that you're sick, I originally wanted to come over and perform well. Xiaoqi, all right, I'm just joking. Next time, if you don't mind, I'll cook for you next time. Okay, Sherman Wan felt Zhang Haoze's hand on that soft spot. She tried her best to make her voice sound normal. Then, next time. All right, next time. Xiaoqi was satisfied. This meant that he still had a chance. Then, have a good rest. See you later. Okay, see you later. Sherman Wan was a little embarrassed. Almost as soon as she hung up the phone, she immediately turned around to look at Zhang Haoze. She didn't care about the weakness in her body and pulled Zhang Haoze's hand away. She glared at him with indignation. Zhang Haoze, are you done? Her voice was hoarse and her body was weak. These few simple movements were enough to make her pant, especially her waist, which was uncomfortable and sore. Zhang Haoze stopped for a moment. He stared at her face. His eyes were deep, and there seemed to be a hidden storm in them. Make an appointment with Xiaoqi next time? You want to eat his cooking? You're eavesdropping? Is this eavesdropping? Xiaoqi spoke so loudly. Did he still need to eavesdrop? Rascal, I thought you already knew. Zhang Haoze's big hand was placed on her waist, and the threat in his eyes was obvious. Shameless. Zhang Haoze hugged her waist closer again. He moved closer to her, and the distance between the two of them was less than 5 centimeters. Do you believe that I can be more shameless? Of course she believed it. She had already felt it in the past few days. Sherman Wan gritted her teeth and tried her best to retreat a little. Zhang Haoze, what do you want? Zhang Haoze stared at her face for a long time, his long and narrow black eyes gloomy. Stay away from Xiaoqi. Sherman Wan was so angry that she almost laughed. Why should I? Zhang Haoze looked at her appearance. She had been through too much these few days. She looked a little haggard, but it didn't hurt her beauty. On the contrary, other than her beauty, there was also a sense of tenderness and tenderness. Zhang Haoze approached her again and sneered. Do you believe that I'll transfer him to the South Africa branch? Sherman Wan was stunned for a moment. She still didn't understand. Zhang Haoze added, Our company doesn't have a branch in South Africa yet. I think Xiaoqi wouldn't mind being the first person. Are you threatening me? Threatening? If you want to think that way, fine. But I think this is a kind reminder. Zhang Haoze reached out and pinched her chin. His eyes were filled with malice. If you don't want to harm him, you should know what to do. Sherman Wan was so angry that her chest rose and fell violently. She bit her lip hatefully and raised her head to glare at Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze, don't go too far. After saying this, she felt that it was ridiculous. It wasn't like she only found out today how outrageous he was. Chapter 669. The room was very quiet. Zhang Haoze and her eyes met, and they both saw their own shadows in each other's eyes. Sherman Wan's face was pale, and her expression was haggard. Her lips were slightly swollen. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness, anger, and conflict as she stared at him in pain. Zhang Haoze slightly missed her gaze and didn't look at her. His silence, in Sherman Wan's eyes, meant that he didn't want to let her go. She couldn't help but reach out and grab the front of his clothes. Tell me, Jean Hausa, what do you want to do for you to let me go? It had only been a few days, but she felt mentally and physically exhausted. She had always been weak in front of him, and she had never been able to be tough. She hated herself for being like this, but she couldn't control herself. As long as she met him, as long as she encountered something related to him, she would become different from herself. She had clearly made up her mind to get rid of him. She had clearly thought that she had made it clear to him, but what was he doing now? There was still a wound on her lips. He had bitten her a few days ago. He had forgotten to control his strength when he had lost control, and her injury hadn't healed yet. He raised his hand and gently caressed her lips. His movements were very light, but Shi Mengwan slapped his hand away. Jean Hausa, answer me. What do you want to do for you to let me go? Tell me, tell me. She was really angry. She didn't care about her exhausted body and kept pounding on his chest. To him, that kind of strength was almost like a cat's paw scratching an itch. Before Shi Mengwan could react, he picked her up and put her on the bed. Jean Hausa. Shi Mengwan's voice was about to turn hoarse. She didn't have any more strength to resist Jean Hausa. She was angry, so she simply closed her eyes and let him be. He could do whatever he wanted. If he didn't want to let her go, what could she do? Jean Hausa found some clothes, picked her up, and put them on for her. Then, he carried her to the bathroom. Her feet, indeed, didn't have any strength at all. Jean Hausa supported her and let her lean against his chest. He squeezed the toothpaste for her. Putting the toothbrush in her hand, Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hausa in the mirror. She took the toothbrush and brushed her teeth as if she was venting her anger. She used so much force that her gums were bleeding. Jean Hausa frowned and gently grabbed her hand. Shi Mengwan stopped for a moment. She looked at Jean Hausa's face in the mirror, and he was also looking at her. In the end, she was defeated. She loosened her grip a little and brushed her teeth carelessly, then rinsed her mouth. She wanted to say something, but Jean Hausa picked her up again. This time, he carried her to the dining room outside. There were many small plates on the dining table, filling it to the brim. There were barbecued pork buns, egg tarts, shrimp dumplings, steamed shumai, beef tripe, beef meatballs, salt and pepper duck chin, steamed chicken feet with black bean sauce, spring rolls, fried dough sticks, and steamed buns. There were 2 cups of soy milk and 2 bowls of shrimp porridge on the side. Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hausa. He put her down and pushed one of the bowls of shrimp porridge in front of her. You. Shi Mengwan didn't know what to say. She saw the marks on these butterflies. This was a very famous Hong Kong-style tea restaurant nearby. That restaurant's business was very good, and because business was so good, it never delivered takeout. And with so many, don't tell her that Jean Hausa brought it back himself. Eat. Jean Hausa's voice was indifferent. Shi Mengwan didn't have a chance to speak even if she wanted to. She looked at the bowl of steaming porridge and didn't move for a long time. Do you want me to feed you? Jean Hausa's long and narrow eyes raised slightly. Shi Mengwan shrunk her neck. Her mind thought of some of the discordant scenes of the past few days. She didn't dare to let him feed her. She picked up the bowl of porridge and found that such a simple action made her hands a little sore. She couldn't help but glare at Jean Hausa again. Before he noticed, she looked away. The porridge tasted good. She had been to this tea restaurant with Su Qing-sang before. At that time, she felt that it would be great if the other party was willing to deliver takeout every day. That way, she wouldn't have to wait in line. She could order takeout earlier and eat before going to work. However, the people inside said that because business was too good, even if there was takeout, it wouldn't be delivered, so there wasn't any. Now that she looked at the table full of breakfast, she didn't know how Jean Hausa did it. She didn't have a big appetite, but she hadn't eaten well for the past few days. For 3 days in a row, she ate takeout. It was the new year, and many shops were on holiday. She didn't have much choice. Jean Hausa was tormenting her again, and she was really hungry. Shi Mengwan, who had eaten more than usual, put down the bowl and looked at Jean Hausa in front of her. She couldn't understand him more and more now. Jean Hausa didn't eat slowly, but he didn't look rough. He took a big bite, but he chewed slowly. His behavior could even be considered elegant. She thought of what Xiao Qi had said before. He said that Jean Hausa had founded several companies over the years and had done a lot of things. She had always known that he was an ambitious man, but his achievements today still made her feel a little surprised and shocked. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed very normal. She remembered that he had nothing back then, but he could always conjure something at the critical moment. For example, money, food. For example, the expenses that the two of them needed. She remembered that time when she changed his clothes. His coat was too thick, and she couldn't do anything about it. In the end, she could only sew the sleeves a little shorter so that she could wear it as a thick coat. However, because it was too thick, she accidentally pricked her hand. Xiao Zhe, who didn't notice what she was doing, snatched the clothes from her hand in the next second, as well as the needle and thread. The youth put her index finger into his mouth. Shi Mengwan looked at his handsome face and felt a little embarrassed. "I'm fine," she said that, but the youth didn't let go of her. His gaze was fervent, and there seemed to be flames in it. Unfortunately, Shi Mengwan was too young at that time, so she didn't understand at all. The youth let go of her, but didn't let her touch the needle and thread again. Shi Mengwan thought to herself, how could she not touch it? Their lives weren't very good now. Although his clothes weren't completely suitable for her to wear after he changed them, and they were even a little ugly, but wasn't enough to keep out the cold. Her thoughts at that time were that simple. She thought that after Xiao Zhe left home, she would continue when he wasn't around. The youth brought back 2 sets of brand new clothes the next day. Not only did the youth bring her clothes, but he also brought matching shoes and hair accessories. There were 3 or 4 sets of clothes inside and outside. Although they weren't branded, she wasn't ignorant at that time. She knew that these clothes weren't cheap. Where did you get them? At that time, the youth held her hand and told her, Wan, trust me, I won't let you suffer. Shi Mengwan didn't know that it was a promise. She blinked her eyes. She naturally believed the youth's words. Dear brother, Wan, as long as you follow me, I won't let you suffer. Given time, he would definitely let her live a good life. That was the youth's promise. Although he was young and immature, he was extremely serious. The chair beside Shi Mengwan was pulled away by someone. She was shocked. When she came back to her senses, she realized that Jean Hausa had already finished eating. He had actually taken care of so many things. Once again, he picked her up and placed her on his lap. What were you thinking about just now? He asked. Shi Mengwan bit her lip and couldn't answer Jean Hausa's question. Jean Hausa turned her body around and looked her in the eye. His eyes were dark, and Shi Mengwan couldn't help but think of the youth from back then. It was also the same eyes, and it was also the same serious and solemn expression. But what he did was the complete opposite of what Jean Hausa did. Jean Hausa pinched her chin again, and his brows were tightly knitted. He seemed to be very dissatisfied with the fact that she was always distracted by his side. This time, Shi Mengwan didn't grab his hand. She even bravely raised her head to look at him. Jean Hausa, I'm thinking about you. She held his cheek with her hand and stared at his face. I'm thinking about you. Seeing his slightly furrowed brows, she reached out her hand and gently smoothed it. I'm thinking, why do you want me? I'm thinking, what do you mean? I'm thinking, what do I have to do for you to let me go? Meeting Jean Hausa's eyes, which had become even deeper, she gently raised the corners of her lips. Jean Hausa, can you tell me? She had already said it several times today, but he hadn't given her an answer even once. Jean Hausa loosened his grip on her chin and pulled her hand away. However, he didn't answer her question. Jean Hausa. Shi Mengwan held his face again. This time, her gaze was very serious. In your heart, am I a prostitute? Jean Hausa's expression suddenly became quite ugly. Shi Mengwan, if you don't treat me like a prostitute, then why are you treating me like this? Shi Mengwan really couldn't understand. The dear brother she liked, admired, and had always been thinking about shouldn't be like this. She stared at him, stubbornly wanting an answer. Although the home clothes she was wearing were thick, they were designed with a large round collar. She held his face like this, and her hands moved forward so that her neckline could be seen clearly in front of him. The green and purple marks on it were all left by him. It also reminded him of how crazy they had been these few days. Jean Hauser felt his body stiffen, but he knew that the other party couldn't take any more. His gaze shifted to the side again. Jean Hauser. He wanted to avoid it, but Shi Mingwan didn't give him a chance to avoid it. Shaoqi is a blind date arranged by my parents. I'm 26 this year. Perhaps I'm not considered old among the unmarried girls in Lin City. But in our town, many girls of my age are already married and have children. She wasn't someone who followed the crowd, nor was she someone who followed the crowd. She said so much today because that person was Jean Hauser. How other people's lives are has nothing to do with me. But I can't ignore my parents' thoughts. If you don't treat me like a prostitute, then can I treat it as if you also have feelings for me? At least, you like me a little and care a little, don't you? As long as he had feelings for her, she could wait and persevere. Jean Hauser's face was turned straight by her again, and he looked at her. Her eyes were fervent, and the light in them made the room lose its color. Compared to him, she was undoubtedly brave. At least in terms of feelings, she was much braver than him. The air was silent, and Jean Hauser was silent. Shi Mingwan's eyes darkened, and she retracted her hand. Jean Hauser, you can go. No matter how much she loved him, she wouldn't lose her dignity and rationality. She wouldn't lower herself to this extent. She retreated a little, and her gaze was cold. She was about to get up and leave, but Jean Hauser reached out and hugged her before she could leave. He wrapped his arms around her tightly and hugged her tightly. Jean Hauser. Shi Mingwan heard his heartbeat. Her voice was very hoarse, but the words she spat out were quite clear. Don't be like this. Jean Hauser didn't let go. He grabbed her waist tightly and pressed his chin against her neck. His body was a little stiff, as if he was enduring it. Jean Hauser, let go of me. She didn't struggle. She no longer had any strength. In 3 days, she had almost exhausted all of her strength. Shi Mingwan. That person finally spoke. His voice was a little hoarse. He called her name. He pressed her face tightly against his chest. When he spoke, she could even hear the vibration of his chest. Give me some time. Shi Mingwan looked up at him. His pitch-black eyes were also looking at her at this moment. She couldn't understand the emotions in them. Give you time? What time? The time to marry me? Shi Mingwan's tone was a little mocking. She didn't believe Jean Hauser's words. Jean Hauser stared at her face and actually nodded. Shi Mingwan looked at him. For a moment, she couldn't tell what she felt. Jean Hauser, give me time, Jean Hauser said again. Shi Mingwan lowered her eyes. She heard the sound of her heart beating. It was the desire in the depths of her heart. She really wanted to marry her dear brother and spend the rest of her life with him. The anticipation in the depths of her heart made her not even have time to think about more realistic problems. You really? If she didn't like him, she naturally wouldn't be so worried about gains and losses. But if she liked him and fell in love with him, there was nothing she could do. It was impossible for her to act according to her own subjective will. Jean Hauser looked at her and nodded. Shi Mingwan was very excited, but the more excited she was, the calmer she appeared. She just stared at Jean Hauser, and he was also looking at her. Shi Mingwan blinked and tried to calm herself down. How long? Seeing that Jean Hauser didn't say anything, he only frowned slightly, as if he was in a difficult position. Shi Mingwan smiled bitterly. You can't make me wait forever, can you? She didn't believe in the saying that a woman's youth was limited, but she had her own problems right now. She couldn't ignore Grandma Shi's 2-year period. Looking at Grandma Shi's body, it wouldn't be a problem for her to live to 100 years old. At that time, if she didn't bring a man back, what would happen to Grandma Shi? Jean Hauser, tell me, how long do you want me to wait for you? There was silence. Jean Hauser's thin lips pursed into a straight line. He looked like he was in a difficult position. Shi Mingwan felt that she couldn't continue the conversation. She thought that she had already done everything a girl could do. What else did Jean Hauser want? Jean Hauser. She forcefully got up from his arms and took a big step back. Her feet were still a little soft. Such a simple action made her feel uncomfortable in the place that she couldn't tell others about. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to ignore the feeling in her body. You can go. Jean Hauser held her hand before she wanted to go back to her room. It won't be long. It won't be long. Shermangwan really wanted to ask him. How long would it be? But she couldn't ask. She looked at John Hauser. His eyes were like a deep spring. She was deeply immersed in them. She was once again pulled into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her gently. He wasn't as rough as he had been these few days, nor was he as overbearing as before. He kissed her gently, bit by bit, and he carefully traced the shape of her lips. The strong Jean Hauser would make it impossible for Shermangwan to refuse, but such a gentle Jean Hauser made Shermangwan confused. She slowly closed her eyes and allowed herself to be intoxicated by his kiss. He finally retreated a little when she was almost suffocated. He pressed his forehead against hers. His breathing was also a little heavy and a little breathless. "Give me some time." His voice was slightly hoarse as he uttered those words in an extremely soft voice. Shermangwan looked into his eyes and finally nodded weakly. Her body was carried by him again, but he didn't go to the room. Instead, he went to the living room. "Do you want to watch a movie?" Jean Hauser asked her. Shermangwan blinked at him. Although she didn't understand what he meant, she still nodded. She got up and chose a movie called Life is Beautiful. Shermangwan had seen this movie before, but it had been too long, so she had forgotten many of the plot. The film festival played very slowly, and she slowly recalled the plot along with the movie. Her eyes were a little red. When she saw Guido take a very ridiculous step and die under the muzzle of Na Chui, Shermangwan's eyes fell. There was a tissue in front of her. She took it and wiped her tears away. She sniffed and found that Jean Hauser was staring at her. She suddenly didn't want him to see her like this. She turned her face and continued to focus on the plot. The movie ended very quickly, but her emotions didn't come out of that kind of environment. Her body was turned around by Jean Hauser. He raised his hand, as if he couldn't understand the change in her emotions. "Why are you crying? Don't you feel touched?" Jean Hauser looked at her expressionlessly and didn't say anything. There is no need to say anything to know that he probably didn't feel anything at all. "If you're not touched, why did you say you wanted to watch a movie?" Jean Hauser turned his gaze away and picked up the remote control to watch another movie. Shermangwan seemed to have realized something. You didn't say you wanted to watch a movie because Shao Qi asked me to watch a movie yesterday, did you?" Jean Hauser turned around and glared at her. Soon, he looked at the screen again. However, Shermangwan clearly saw that his earlobes were slowly turning red. This realization stunned her for a moment. She bit her lip. For a moment, she thought that there was something wrong with her eyes. "Are you jealous of Shao Qi?" Shermangwan asked subconsciously. In the next second, she saw that Jean Hauser's earlobes were even redder. At this moment, Jean Hauser turned around and glared at her. His gaze looked very fierce. Shermangwan seemed to have discovered something extraordinary. She still wanted to say something. However, Jean Hauser kissed her lips. It was a kiss that was rougher than before, not giving her a chance to speak. Shermangwan blinked her eyes. There was a faint smile in her bright and beautiful eyes. They were extremely bright, like stars in the sky. However, Jean Hauser raised his hand to cover her eyes and deepen the kiss. Bit by bit, his lips stole her breath and occupied it. His hands also started to be dishonest. Shermangwan wanted to get rid of his hand, but he pushed her down on the sofa and covered her eyes with the silk towel she had used before. When her eyes couldn't see, her senses would become especially sharp. The weather was still cold. Shermangwan bit her lip. Not here. The man seemed to want to punish her for mocking him just now. Not only did he not let go of her, but he also firmed his determination to do it here. She couldn't resist, so she could only dance with him. At night, Shermangwan, who was sleeping on the bed, righteously rejected Jean Hauser and didn't let him continue. She had really been tortured by him too much these few days. If he continued, her waist would definitely break. Jean Hauser stared at her face for a long time, but in the end, he really didn't continue. He hugged her waist and pressed his chin against the top of her hair. The lights in the room had already been turned off, leaving only a bedside lamp. Shermangwan's back was facing Jean Hauser. She looked at the small lamp, and her voice was very soft. "Jean Hauser." He didn't respond, but Shermangwan knew that he wasn't asleep. "Don't you need to go to work?" It was already past the 7th day of the Chinese New Year. Normally speaking, many companies would have already started work. No need, because he was lying down. His voice sounded a little hoarse, but it was especially sexy. You. Shi Mengwan thought of what Xiao Qi said. You're starting a company now? Yes. Pretty good. She still remembered the young man who had nothing more than 10 years ago. At that time, he said that he had to earn a lot of money and that he would give her a good life. Does your company make money? Yes. That's good. Shi Mengwan nodded gently. At this moment, he turned her body around and let her face him. She looked up at him. Can you tell me about you? She wanted to know more about him, such as where he had been all these years and what else he had done other than starting a company. Didn't he have no home or parents? Then how'd he go to university? She had a lot of questions to ask, but Jean Hauser pressed her face against his chest. Sleep, Jean Hauser. If you don't sleep, I'll do something to make you want to sleep. Shi Mengwan's face was a little red, so she really didn't ask. If he didn't want to tell her, she wouldn't ask. When he wanted to tell her, she would ask. She sighed slightly in her heart. She didn't open her eyes. Instead, she rubbed her face against his chest. Jean Hauser. Yes, 2 years. What? I'll wait for you for 2 years. Shi Mengwan's voice was very soft. She already wanted to sleep. These few days, she really didn't have much time to sleep. She didn't hear Jean Hauser's response, and she didn't need his response. If you can't marry me in 2 years, I'll find a random man to marry, she said. Jean Hauser stared at her face, but she seemed to be completely asleep and didn't make sound. After a long time, her steady breathing could be heard, confirming that she had really fallen asleep. 2 years. Chapter 670. Shi Mengwan, who had slept well the night before, was in good spirits when she woke up in the morning. She decided to visit Xiang Kaiping today. She had been with Jean Hauser for the past few days and hadn't gone out. When she woke up in the morning, breakfast was already on the dining table. Jean Hauser was in charge of Shi Mengwan's 3 meals these days. She knew that he didn't buy it, but she felt the same in her heart. The rebellious young man only knew to wait for her to prepare breakfast and wake him up to eat. Jean Hauser was outside the balcony, seemingly answering a phone call. She couldn't hear what he was saying. She wanted to go over and ask, but Jean Hauser had already hung up. Shi Mengwan looked at his suit and leather shoes. This suit didn't seem to be left with her before. She knew that he woke up very early every day. Did someone send it to him? Are you going out today? To work. Jean Hauser sat down at the dining table. That word could be considered an explanation. Shi Mengwan sat down opposite him. She looked at his expression and thought of something. Then, will you come back tonight? Jean Hauser's hand that was picking up the chopsticks paused for a moment. He glanced at her, then nodded. Yes. Shi Mengwan didn't even notice that her eyes lit up because of Jean Hauser's word. Then you should be early. I have nothing to do today anyway. I'll go buy ingredients to make dumplings in the afternoon. After dinner, Jean Hauser went to work. Shi Mengwan looked at the empty room, and for the first time, a real smile appeared on her face. Now, let's leave it like this for now. This is also good. She cleaned up the dishes and went to the bathroom to get Jean Hauser's clothes, intending to wash them. However, when she saw his clothes, she realized that Jean Hauser's clothes needed to be dry cleaned. She washed her own clothes and tidied up the house. Shi Mengwan carried Jean Hauser's clothes downstairs and went to a nearby dry cleaner to wash the 2 sets of clothes that Jean Hauser had left there. Then, she went to the hospital to accompany Xiang Kaiping for a while. After the 7th day, Su Qingsang had already started work. The hospital she stayed in was the largest hospital in Lin City, so Su Qingsang was very busy. Shi Mengwan didn't expect that Xiang Kaiping would actually want to introduce her. She found a good doctor in the hospital. Speaking of which, Shi Mengwan had seen that man before. He used to pursue Su Qingsang, although Su Qingsang didn't know anything about it. As a bystander, how could Shi Mengwan not know that the person Zhou Hongshan liked was Su Qingsang? She was so frightened by Xiang Kaiping that she even refused to have lunch with Xiang Kaiping. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, Xiang Kaiping would ask Su Qingsang to bring them over. That would be really embarrassing for her. After leaving the hospital, she received a call from Su Qingsang. Su Qing-sang couldn't stop laughing. Don't worry. My mother just said it casually. She was too bored staying in the hospital. I know, but your mother is really too passionate. I can't take it anymore. He was so concerned about her personal problems that she was under a lot of pressure. It's better if you can't take it, Su Qing-sang said, half jokingly and half seriously. Maybe you'll really meet your true love. Qing-sang, all right, I won't tease you anymore. Su Qing-sang had always known about the knot in her heart. But I really think that you should stop waiting for that big brother of yours. It's been so long. He's too unreliable. Qing-sang. Shi Mengwan wanted to say that it wasn't unreliable at all. She had already met him now, and they were very close. But Su Qing-sang wouldn't believe that. She was also too embarrassed to say it. All right, I'm just saying, you still have to rely on yourself. Su Qing-sang had tried to persuade her many times, but she had stopped a long time ago. It was just a casual mention. After hanging up the phone, Shi Mengwan was a little lost in thought. Unreliable? Thinking about it seriously, it was true. Jean Hauser didn't say that he wanted to marry her, and he didn't confirm her identity. Now that they were like this, it felt a little shameful to talk about it. After all, Jean Hauser didn't seem to be willing to reveal her identity now. She really looked like she was going to throw herself at him. What she said before she fell asleep yesterday was true. 2 years. She gave Jean Hauser 2 years, and she also gave herself 2 years. In 2 years, if she couldn't move Jean Hauser to marry her, then she would give up. But before that, she always wanted to give herself a chance. She had waited for more than 10 years and searched for more than 10 years. When she thought there was no hope, she found it and met it. No matter what the final way out for her and Jean Hauser was, whether it was a calamity or fate, she would accept it. At least, she didn't want to regret her youth. She looked at the blue sky above her head. The weather was really good, and she was actually in a good mood. No matter what, she had waited for her dear brother. This result was already very good for her. There were some things that she wouldn't regret as long as she tried her best. Chen Feifei sat in Jean Hauser's office. She looked at Jean Hauser's position with unfriendly eyes. She had been waiting for Jean Hauser for half an hour. Half an hour, but Jean Hauser still hadn't appeared. She stood up and walked outside, looking at Lo Xian, who was sitting outside. Where did Jean Hauser go? Don't tell me you don't know. Miss Chun, I really don't know. You don't know? Chen Feifei sneered. If you don't know, then how did you become a secretary? Lo Xian stood there and bent down to listen to Chen Feifei's temper. That attitude made Chen Feifei even angrier. She stood up and pointed at Lo Xian. Tell me, where did Jean Hauser go? Lo Xian had seen Chen Feifei's appearance in front of Jean Hauser. She was like a completely different person. He lowered his back and looked very respectful. Miss Chun, although President Jean is my boss, he really doesn't need to report everything to me. So it's normal that I don't know where he went. Chen Feifei stood up and stomped her feet angrily. She turned around and went to Qin Yongchang's office. Qin Yongchang had just returned from a meeting. As soon as he entered the office, he saw his beloved daughter looking unhappy. What's wrong? Who made our baby angry? Who else? Chen Feifei stood up. Or is it Jean Hauser? He hasn't been home for days. As she spoke, she went forward and hooked Chen Feifei's hand. Dad, what kind of work did you give Brother Hao? Look, it's not even the 15th yet, and he's already so busy. Qin Yongchang looked at Chen Feifei with a complicated gaze. He only said for a moment, don't be too willful. You know that I've arranged work for Hauser. When he's done, he'll naturally come back. Dad, I just want him to accompany me. You're not allowed to arrange any more work for him. Look at you. I've really spoiled you. After Qin Yongchang finished speaking, he patted her hand. Don't forget that Hauser is not only in charge of our company's business, but also his own company's business. Speaking of this, I'm even angrier. Chen Feifei pouted. Isn't our family's company big? Brother Hao still wants to open a company outside. You shouldn't have agreed to let Brother Hao open a company outside. Qin Yongchang glared at Chen Feifei. Jean Hauser is talented. Even if I don't agree with his ability, do you think he won't open a company outside? Back then, Jean Hauser had only just graduated from high school, and he had already asked him to borrow money to invest in a fund. At first, he was unwilling, but he didn't expect that he had misjudged him. Jean Hauser actually had that kind of ability. In one summer vacation, he had earned his first $1,000,000 yuan. Later, his wealth had increased by leaps and bounds in the past few years. If it weren't for the fact that the Chun family still owed Jean Hauser a debt of gratitude, he felt that Jean Hauser might really have left the Chun family. Dad, besides, Dad is doing it for you. A hint of calculation flashed across Chun Yongchang's eyes, but it appeared so quickly that Chun Feifei didn't see it. Do you know how much Jean Hauser's technology company is worth now? Do you know how much the website he invested in is worth now? All of this will be yours in the future. Chun Feifei bit her lip and looked at Chun Yongchang worriedly. Dad, I don't want any company. I just want brother how to accompany me. Nonsense. Chun Yongchang glared at his daughter and realized that his attitude was too harsh. In the end, he softened his tone. Feifei, let me tell you, Jean Hauser is too scheming. I'm just afraid that you'll suffer a loss. Then why don't you ask brother how to marry me as soon as possible? Look, a grown girl can't be kept at home. Do you really want to get married as soon as possible? Don't you want to accompany Dad for a few more years? Dad, if I marry brother Hao, he'll still live at home in the future. Not only can I accompany you, but you'll also have a son. You. Chun Yongchang smiled. All right, you can go. Leave this matter to Dad. Don't worry. I'll definitely get your brother how to marry you. Dad is the best. Chun Feifei kissed Chun Yongchang on the face before turning around and leaving. After she left, Chun Yongchang called his secretary, Little Wang. Secretary Wang, check where Jean Hauser has been these few days. Yes. Secretary Wang left. Chun Yongchang thought about his plan and picked up the phone to dial another number. Before Mengwan bought it home, she really went to buy the ingredients to make dumplings. When she returned home, Jean Hauser hadn't returned yet. She went into the kitchen, put everything away, and tidied up. The dumpling skin was ready-made and sold. She just needed to mix the stuffing. It wasn't too difficult for her. After washing the vegetables and chopping the stuffing, she couldn't help but think of her dear brother again. That year, they spent the new year together. That was their first year together. The winter in Lin City was especially cold, but it didn't snow. Near the bungalow Mengwan and the others lived in, there was a young couple from the north. The two of them couldn't go home for the new year, so they started to prepare for the new year early. Mengwan happened to pass by and saw it, so she felt that she should also prepare. Dear brother, can we also make dumplings for the new year? Make dumplings? The young man who returned home took off his coat. When he heard this, he frowned. You know how to? A little. Mengwan nodded. I saw my mother make dumplings before and helped. However, I didn't do it myself. It's too troublesome. Don't do it. It's the new year. Everyone eats dumplings. Eating dumplings makes it more festive. Let's go. How about we go buy the ingredients? The young man couldn't win against Mengwan, so he followed her to pick the ingredients. When Mengwan really wanted to do it, she realized that it wasn't as easy as she thought. Usually, it was very easy to see her mother do this, but now that she bought the ingredient herself, she realized that it was very difficult. The stuffing was fine. She learned to mix it, and it would be fine. It was either a little salty or a little bland. However, the dumpling skin made Mengwan a little difficult. In the past, it was Mengwan's mother who mixed the dough at home, and she helped her. However, it was her first time rolling the dough skin herself. When she really kneaded the dough skin into a ball, she realized that it was very difficult to roll the dough skin into thin slices. She tried several dumpling skins, but they all failed. They were either too thin or too thick. The young man crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at her movements. He sneered. Are you sure you can? The young girl was very embarrassed. She had never been so embarrassed before. I'll try again. I'll definitely be able to do it. The young man looked at her mockingly. Forget it. If you don't know how, we'll eat something else today. No, I definitely will. Mengwan was very stubborn. Today was New Year's Eve. Wasn't New Year's Eve supposed to be eaten with dumplings? However, Mengwan tried again, but the result was actually too thin. It actually broke. Her face was red. I don't believe I won't succeed. She was a very stubborn person. She stubbornly decided that she had to succeed. He picked up another ball of dough and tried again. This time, he didn't know why, but he actually pressed down on his hand. The young man looked at her actions and reached out to take the rolling pin in her hand. Let me do it. Shi Mingwan looked at the young man. She couldn't believe that he actually knew how to roll dumpling skins. Are you joking? Let me do it. I'll just try a few more times. The young man didn't even raise his head. He picked up the small ball of dough and pressed it with his palm. Then, he copied Shi Mingwan's actions and started rolling it. The first one was too thick and failed. The second one was too thin and failed again. Shi Mingwan bit her lip. While she was still thinking about how to not hurt the young man's third dumpling skin was already done. Here, Shi Mingwan looked at the dumpling skin, and for a moment, she thought that there was something wrong with her eyes. Dear brother, she picked up the small dumpling skin. Have you rolled it before? No. The young man's hands didn't stop moving. He had mastered the trick, and his movements were fast and good. Shi Mingwan was speechless. The young man felt her gaze and raised his head slightly. What? Aren't you going to wrap it? Yes, I'll wrap it. Shi Mingwan felt that this was simply unfair. She picked up the very even piece of dumpling skin and looked at the young man's movements. How did you know? I knew it from watching you do it. Shi Mingwan's pretty face was full of dissatisfaction. I've also seen my mother do a lot. The young man glanced at her. You're short. Because she was short, she couldn't exert strength, or it wasn't easy for her to exert strength. Shi Mingwan almost choked on her own saliva. How am I short? Although she was 13 years old, she was already more than 5 meters tall. She wasn't considered short among her peers at all, okay? Her gaze fell on the young man, and she lowered her head dejectedly. All right, compared to Xiao Zhe, she was indeed short. After the new year, Xiao Zhe had grown a lot taller. Now he was probably 8 meters tall. She was very depressed, but her hands didn't stop wrapping the dumplings. She didn't know how to roll dough, but she still knew how to make dumplings. After all, she had helped a lot at home in the past. Just like that, one of them rolled the dumpling skin, and the other made the dumpling skin. Unexpectedly, their movements were very fast. It was getting late in this small house with nothing. The two young men and women wrapped the dumplings together. Halfway through, Shi Mingwan glanced at Xiao Zhe. Dear brother, do you have coins? Why do you want coins? Wrap them in dumplings. Whoever eats them later will be very lucky next year. The young man glanced at her with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Superstition. How is it superstition? Isn't it all like this? Shi Mingwan bit her lip, thought for a moment, and shook her head. No. Coins are very dirty. Let's use peanuts. Previously, they had bought some snacks, including a bag of peanuts. Shi Mingwan ran over and peeled 2 peanuts. She took out the peanuts inside and wrapped them in 2 dumplings. She looked up at Xiao Zhe. Dear brother, I'll wrap 2. There are 2 peanuts in each. This is a pair. When the time comes, we'll each have a pair of peanuts. This way, our luck will be very good next year. The young man didn't think much of it, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Shi Mingwan was in high spirits. After wrapping them, she placed the 2 in the middle of the dumplings. I'll mess them up. When the time comes, it'll really depend on luck. She said it excitedly, as if she would be able to get 1 for each of them as she thought. After wrapping it, Shi Mingwan took the dumplings and put them into the pot. Big brother, wait a moment. There will be dumplings to eat soon. While cooking the dumplings, Shi Mingwan didn't forget to stir-fry 2 dishes. Usually, they wouldn't be so extravagant, but today was New Year's Eve. No matter what, they should at least have some New Year's atmosphere, right? The dumplings were cooked, and the dishes were served. The steaming hot dumplings made people feel much better. Big brother, have some dumplings. Shi Mingwan's dumplings were pretty good, although they weren't as exquisite as the ones sold in restaurants. They were all very plump and well-proportioned. Xiao Zhe glanced at her, picked up a dumpling, and took a bite. How is it, big brother? How does it taste? The young man glanced at her and nodded in affirmation. Then, he lowered his head and continued eating. Shi Mingwan tasted one and felt that it was not bad. She laughed. Dear brother, my skills are not bad. I think we can open a dumpling restaurant. I'll be in charge of making the dumplings, and you'll be in charge of rolling the dumpling wrappers. How about that?" The young man stopped eating the dumplings and looked up at her. "Didn't you say you wanted to be a fashion designer?" Sherman Wan's expression was awkward for a moment. Then she said with a matter-of-fact expression, "Then we can open a dumpling restaurant first. After we earn money, we can go learn fashion design." The young man didn't say anything and just quietly ate the dumplings. "Dear brother, there's more inside. Eat more. It's the new year today." The young man was halfway through eating when he picked up a dumpling. He seemed to have bitten something hard, and his movements froze. "What's wrong?" Sherman Wan suddenly perked up. "You ate peanuts? That's great. Dear brother, your luck will definitely be very good in the future." Xiaoze didn't believe this at all, but very quickly he ate a second peanut. "Dear brother, you ate peanuts again? You're so lucky." Sherman Wan's eyes were pure congratulations, without any reluctance. Xiaoze was stunned for a moment, but he put the remaining peanut into Sherman Wan's bowl. "Here, big brother, didn't you say that my luck would be good? I will share my good fortune with you." Sherman Wan's eyes immediately turned red. "Dear brother, let's eat." The young man was a man of few words. Sherman Wan lowered her head to eat, but tears fell without warning. Big drops of tears fell into the bowl. The youth was stunned for a moment. "You." Sherman Wan bit her lip and couldn't say anything. In this half a year, she could force herself not to miss home and her family. But today was New Year's Eve. At this time, he couldn't help it. No matter how unreasonable her grandmother was, she still had her mother, father, and her younger sister who was only a few months old. She had been away from home for a few months, and she didn't know how her sister was doing. She also didn't know if her parents would still think of sending her sister away after she left. She missed her mother even more. When she left home, her mother had just finished her confinement. She could still help her mother at home, but if she wasn't at home, who would help her mother with the housework? The more she thought about it, the sadder she felt. The more she thought about it, the more she missed her family. Tears would fall as if they were free. The youth rarely saw Sherman Wan cry. Since the two of them knew each other, most of the time, Sherman Wan was cheerful and sunny. It was rare for her to be like this. He looked at her and suddenly got up to get the bag of peanuts. He took out 2 peeled ones and placed them in Sherman Wan's bowl. What good luck or bad luck? I think it's all the same. Sherman Wan was still sad just now, but when she saw the youth's actions, she burst into laughter. "Dear brother, she didn't mean that. I don't want to eat lucky dumplings." She sniffled and didn't dare to face the youth's eyes. "I just miss home." She wiped the tears in her eyes and looked at John Hauser. "I miss my father, my mother, and my little sister." The youth looked at her, a little dazed. His brows were tightly furrowed, as if he had thought of something. "If you really miss home, then go back." Sherman Wan looked at him and suddenly shook her head. "No, I'm not going back." She missed home very much, but she couldn't go back. She was very afraid that if she went back, her parents would send her little sister away again. "Dear brother." Sherman Wan wiped the tears in her eyes and looked at John Hauser. "What about you? It's the new year today. Don't you miss your parents?" The youth's expression could be considered gentle just now, but his face was suddenly stained with a layer of gloominess. At this moment, his eyes were filled with malice and malice. "My father and mother are both gone." This was the first time Sherman Wan had heard John Hauser mention his parents after being together for so long. She was stunned. Looking at the indifference in the youth's eyes, she felt a stabbing pain in her heart. She suddenly reached out and hugged the youth. "It's okay, dear brother. From now on, I'll be your family." The youth didn't say anything. This was the first time Sherman Wan took the initiative to hug him. He lowered his head to look at her. The young girl had just come out of the kitchen, and there was still the smell of smoke on her body. He really felt like a family member. He reached out to hug the young girl. The youth didn't say anything. Family? This feeling seemed pretty good. Chapter 671. Sherman Wan had already made more than half of the dumplings. She was very quick at wrapping dumplings. Strangely, after so many years, she had never learned how to roll dumpling wrappers. He never would. At home, Mother Sure was the one who rolled the dough. She only needed to wrap it. She was afraid of trouble when she went out. Not to mention that there were ready-made dumpling skins for sale now. You're back? Dinner will be ready soon. The kitchen was very small, so Sherming Wan made dumplings on the dining table. The stuffing was mixed in a large basin, and 2/3 of it had already been wrapped up. Jean Hausa stepped forward and watched Sherming Wan's movements. She had a pair of extremely beautiful hands. Her fingers were slender and smooth. She wrapped the dumplings very quickly and looked very pleasing to the eye. Jean Hausa pulled out the chair in front of the dining table and sat there watching Sherming Wan make dumplings. Sherming Wan felt uncomfortable under his gaze, and her hands stopped moving for a moment. What happened? Seeing that Jean Hausa didn't speak, she pouted and said, "Will you? Do you need help?" "I won't." Those 3 words were spoken in a low voice. Sherming Wan knew that he wouldn't, so she stopped looking at him. She quickly wrapped the dumplings and put them away. Then he went into the kitchen to boil water. When the water boiled, she found the cured meat and sausages that Mother Sure had asked her to bring to Lin City before she came back. She calculated the portions, cut them, and then stir-fried 2 dishes. When she took the dishes out of the pot, she found that Jean Hausa had been staring at her at the door. The corners of Sherming Wan's lips curled up slightly. "Wait a minute. The dumplings will be ready soon." As she spoke, she handed one of the dishes to Jean Hausa. "Please take it out." Jean Hausa didn't expect her to ask him to serve the dishes. He stared at the dishes in her hand for a few seconds and finally reached out his hand. "There's also this." Sherming Wan smiled and glanced at the processing table. Jean Hausa placed the dishes on the table outside. Sherming Wan looked at the dumplings. They were ready to be cooked. She scooped out the dumplings and brought them to the dining table outside. "All right, bring 2 bowls over." Jean Hausa had already sat down. Because of Sherming Wan's words, he glanced at her and finally got up to get the bowl. Sherming Wan had a faint smile in her eyes. Some things required a sense of participation. This was her home. Jean Hausa was now her man. She had to let him feel a sense of participation. There were many things that required 2 people to do together in order to improve their relationship. She hoped that their relationship could be enhanced outside of the bed, not just in bed every time they had an exchange of feelings. Seeing Jean Hausa sit down with the bowl, Sherming Wan put the dumplings into his bowl. "How about trying it?" Jean Hausa tasted one, looked up at her, and nodded. Sherming Wan's eyes turned red because of his reaction. However, this time, she controlled herself and didn't let herself lose her composure. She lowered her head and ate the dumplings quietly. "My mom made this. So is this." Actually, when she was with Dear Brother back then, Sherming Wan had also thought of getting some New Year's goods. But at that time, she was really too young to know. She couldn't now either, but she could let him taste her mother's cooking. Sherming Wan made a lot of dumplings. It's only half cooked. She put the rest in the freezer so that she could cook it the next time she wanted to eat it. And the food she cooked all went into Jean Hausa's stomach. She really couldn't help but sigh. His appetite was really good. After dinner, Sherming Wan cleaned up the kitchen. When she came out, Jean Hausa pulled her to sit down on the sofa. His hand was on her waist, and he held her in his arms. Sherming Wan felt a little uncomfortable. She was too full, and Jean Hausa's actions made her feel dangerous. "Jean Hausa, how about we go for a walk?" She grabbed his hand away. Sherming Wan really didn't want to do such exercise right after dinner. It was too tiring. "We're too full tonight. We should go for a walk to digest our food, don't you think?" Jean Hausa's hand was still on her waist. Sherming Wan wasn't confident that he would agree to her request, but no matter what, she had to give it a try. "Let's go. Go for a walk." Jean Hausa stood up. Sherming Wan was happy. She went to get her coat. She had already gone out today, and her coat was hanging at the entrance. She took the keys and phone and put them in her pocket. She looked at Jean Hausa with shining eyes. After going downstairs, Sherming Wan felt a little regretful. The sun was out during the day, and the temperature in Lin City was still okay. She could still tolerate it. But it was night now, and Lin City was near the sea. The wind was strong, and the temperature was low. A gust of wind blew over, and Sherming Wan couldn't take it anymore. "It's so cold. Why was it so cold? She seemed to have heard the weather forecast that it would cool down again, but she didn't expect it to be so cold. She reached out and rubbed her palms. Just as she was about to put her hand back in her pocket, Jean Hauser reached out to hold her hand and put her hand into his pocket. His hand was very big, and it tightly wrapped around hers. Sherman Wan's mind flashed for a moment. Looking at Jean Hauser's deep profile, she bit her lip and couldn't help but feel a trace of joy in her heart. She knew that her dear brother was like this. She moved her face closer to Jean Hauser's arm and rubbed it. The smile on Sherman Wan's face became brighter. Jean Hauser felt her movements and turned to look at her. He didn't say much, but the expression on his face became much gentler. The next day, it rained in Lin City. When Jean Hauser left the company, he received a call from Chun Yongchang saying that something had happened to Chun Feifei. When Jean Hauser rushed back to the Chun family, the doctor had just left. Chun Feifei was lying on the bed with a pale face. Chun Yongchang stood at the side, his face full of concern. "Uncle." Jean Hauser looked at Chun Yongchang, and his gaze fell on Chun Feifei's face. "Is Feifei okay? She has an old illness. It's not like you don't know." Chun Yongchang glanced at Jean Hauser as he spoke. "You haven't come back for the past few days. Feifei misses you too much. She ran out to look for you, but, the temperature dropped yesterday. Feifei's health isn't good, so when she was drenched in the rain, she got sick." Jean Hauser didn't say anything, but Chun Feifei, who was on the bed, glanced at her father. "Dad, don't blame Brother Hao. It's not like Brother Hao didn't come to see me on purpose. You know that Brother Hao is busy with work." "Feifei, you." Chun Yongchang looked at his daughter with a conflicted expression. He seemed to be helpless that his daughter always valued Jean Hauser more than him. "Hauser." Chun Yongchang looked at Jean Hauser. "Originally, this wasn't your fault. But Feifei is very weak now, so you should accompany her." As he spoke, Chun Yongchang walked out. The room quieted down, leaving only Jean Hauser and Chun Feifei. After Chun Yongchang left, Chun Feifei reached out to pull Jean Hauser's hand. "Brother Hao, Dad is too worried about me. It has nothing to do with you. Please don't be angry." "I'm not angry." Jean Hauser wanted to pull his hand out, but Chun Feifei held it tightly. "Brother Hao, are you really not angry?" Her face was full of uneasiness at this time, as if she was really afraid that Jean Hauser would be angry. Jean Hauser pursed his lips into a straight line and shook his head gently. Chun Feifei was satisfied, and a gentle smile appeared on her face. But her hands were still holding his hand tightly. "Brother Hao, what have you been busy with these days? I miss you very much. When I call you, you always say that you have something to do. When I go to your company, I can't find you. Do you know how worried I am about you? There are a lot of things to do at the company." Jean Hauser looked at Chun Feifei and resisted the urge to pull his hand back. "No matter how busy the company is, you still have to take care of your health. Just look at me and you will understand. Ever since I was young, I have been a patient. Now that I have grown up, not only can I not help you, but I will also tire you out. It's nothing." Jean Hauser's voice was very indifferent. His indifference didn't just start today. Ever since Chun Feifei saved Jean Hauser and brought him home, he had always been like this. However, the more Jean Hauser was like this, the more Chun Feifei couldn't stop herself. She always wanted to get Jean Hauser. "Brother Hao, you don't have to comfort me. I know that you have always thought of me as a burden, so you don't want to tell me anything about the company or the outside world. But Brother Hao, I really like you." Chun Feifei's eyes were fixed on Jean Hauser. She could clearly see that those eyes were all about him. "I know." Chun Feifei bit her lip. She was still a little hurt by Jean Hauser's reaction. "Brother Hao, what about you? Do you like me?" Jean Hauser frowned and looked at Chun Feifei as he withdrew his hand. "You're not in good health. Rest early." "Brother Hao." Chun Feifei went to pull his hand again. She looked up at him with pleading eyes. "Do you hate me? Don't think too much. It's nothing. Then why didn't you come back to accompany me? You said that you would take care of me." "Feifei." This time, Jean Hauser didn't have a cold expression. "In my heart, you're similar to my sister. But, all right, it's getting late. You should rest." Jean Hauser patted her shoulder and turned to leave. After he left, Chun Feifei's expression almost changed. Who wanted to be his sister? Who wanted to be his sister? She had always wanted to be his woman, not his sister. Chun Feifei looked at the bedside lamp at the head of the bed and swept the floor without hesitation. The room was very soundproof and covered with a thick carpet. No matter how loud the noise she made, no one would hear it. Not only did she smash the bedside lamp, but Chun Feifei also threw everything around her that could be smashed and thrown away. It wasn't until she was panting and exhausted that she called the servants to clean up the room. The servants of the Qin family were already used to Chun Feifei's outbursts from time to time. They silently packed up the things and put in new ones. In a short period of time, even the carpet had been changed. The room was the same as before Zhang Haoze came in. There was no trace of damage. Zhang Haoze went downstairs and met Qin Yongchang. When he saw him, he waved. The two of them once again went to the Chun family study room one after the other. Haoze, have you been busy recently? I'm fine. Zhang Haoze's voice was indifferent and sounded very calm. You haven't been in the company for a few days, and the company's matters have been pushed back a lot. Look, I'm old now, and my energy can't keep up. In the future, you still have to spend more time on business. Yes, I understand. Speaking of which, I'm almost at the age to retire. Look, how about you take over the Chun Corporation? Zhang Haoze lowered his eyes, and his face was expressionless. I'm afraid that's not appropriate, right? There's nothing inappropriate about it. After you and Feifei get married, won't the Qin family be yours? Zhang Haoze didn't reply, but Qin Yongchang sighed at this moment. Haoze, I also know that you're not willing to marry Feifei. But Feifei is my only daughter. She really likes you. I can't let her suffer. Uncle. I also know that all these years, you've only treated Feifei as your sister. There's no love between a man and a woman. But her health isn't good, and she's been spoiled by me. I won't be at ease handing her over to someone else. After thinking about it, only you are suitable. Seeing that Zhang Haoze didn't say anything, the expression on Chun Yongchang's face became more and more pained. Haoze, you can't forget your roots. If our family hadn't taken you in, sent you to school, and given you the best conditions, how could you have achieved what you have today? Don't tell me you're thinking of abandoning Feifei just because you're successful. Uncle, I've said it before. I treat Feifei as my sister. I'll do my best to take care of her. What's more useful than marrying her and accompanying her for the rest of her life? Seeing that Zhang Haoze still wanted to speak, he went forward and patted him on the shoulder. All right, you should be tired today. Go and rest. As for the wedding date, I'll get someone to pick a good day. Anyway, you guys already understand and are familiar with each other. If you need time, then get engaged first, then get married. Uncle, all right, I still have work to deal with. You can go back to your room and rest first. Qin Yongchang didn't listen to Zhang Haoze. He waved his hand and sent him away. Zhang Haoze glanced at Qin Yongchang, then finally took a step back and left the study. Before he returned to his room, he saw the family's servants coming down from upstairs with 2 large garbage bags. Zhang Haoze stood there until the servant left. Then he went upstairs again. Shi Mingwan was shocked when she received Xiao Qi's call. Hello. Hello, Mingwan. Xiao Qi's voice sounded very happy. Have you recovered from your cold? Yes. Thank you for your concern. It wasn't a cold, but Shi Mingwan couldn't say that. What's the matter? That's good. I said I wanted to come and see you. No need. Shi Mingwan answered a little quickly. She looked at the time. Zhang Haoze hadn't returned yet, but she had already prepared the food. That's a pity. Xiao Qi thought for a moment. Mingwan, we didn't finish watching the movie that day. Do you have time recently? I might not have time recently. Shi Mingwan bit her lip. My studio has received a new order recently, so I'm a little busy. I see. Xiao Qi nodded. Then, can we have a meal together? Xiao Qi, look, you're very busy and don't have time to watch a movie. Then you have to have time to eat, right? Before I came, Annie told me that you don't know how to take care of yourself. Look, you can't let me disappoint Auntie, can you? Shi Mingwan bit her lip. After thinking about it, she decided to agree. At least she should make things clear to him. Then how about this? Let's meet at noon tomorrow. Okay. Xiao Qi was satisfied. He said a few more words of concern to her and told her to take good care of herself before hanging up. Shi Mingwan sat down and took out her phone to call Jean Hauser. However, no one picked up after calling for a long time. She looked at the table of dishes, and her good mood seemed to have suddenly disappeared. She had been very happy these past few days. Jean Hauser had been here with her. During the day, she stayed at home to draw, while Jean Hauser went to work. At night, they ate together, took a walk, and lingered. Jean Hauser was much gentler than before. At least, he no longer tormented her for fun. She could also get happiness from that matter. When her body merged with Jean Hauser's body, she felt satisfied. Not only her body, but also her heart. That was the dear brother she had been longing to find. That was the person she had always liked and loved. Looking at the black screen, Shi Mingwan sent another message to Jean Hauser. She didn't say anything unnecessary. She just asked him if he would come back for dinner. This time, Jean Hauser replied, "I have something to do today. You eat first." Putting down her phone, Shi Mingwan looked at the dishes on the table and felt a headache. There was also a trace of undetectable disappointment and loneliness. The next day, Shi Mingwan arrived at the place she had agreed to meet Xiaoqi early. She had always been afraid of the cold. Today, she was wearing a thick khaki coat and a scarf of the same color. Her entire body looked much more plump. She thought that she had arrived early, but she didn't expect Xiaoqi to be earlier than her. "Sorry, I'm late." "Not at all. I arrived early." Xiaoqi got up and pulled a chair for Shi Mingwan. This action made Shi Mingwan a little uncomfortable. She took a step back and looked at Xiaoqi. "I'll do it myself. Can't you give me a chance to serve a beauty?" This person. Shi Mingwan really didn't know what to say. She didn't decline anymore and sat down. The temperature of the air conditioner in the room was very high. She took off her coat and put it aside. "Are all fashion designers as good at dressing as you?" Xiaoqi looked at the clothes she was wearing, and there was obvious admiration in his eyes. Shi Mingwan looked at herself and cleared her throat. "Thank you. I think so. But I think you're definitely the best at dressing," Xiaoqi whispered. "After all, they can't be as beautiful as you." "Thank you." Shi Mingwan felt a little uncomfortable from his praise. The waiter happened to bring the menu over at this moment, and Xiaoqi very gracefully let Shi Mingwan order first. After ordering the dishes, Shi Mingwan looked at Xiaoqi and thought about how to speak to him. At this moment, Xiaoqi poured her a cup of hot tea. "It's cold outside. Have a cup of tea first." "Thank you." To be honest, Xiaoqi was really a very good marriage partner. No matter what, he was very suitable. But this was how the world was. You might not like the suitable one. "Xiaoqi, last time I was going to introduce my situation, but I didn't finish. I think I'd better tell you about it." Her serious attitude made Xiaoqi also become a little serious. Go ahead. I want to say that we're actually not suitable." "Why? What's wrong with me?" Xiaoqi asked instinctively. After asking, he realized that he seemed to be too narcissistic. "I'm sorry, I just think that I think my qualifications are not bad, so I think you can give it a try." Shi Mingwan shook her head. "The problem isn't with you, it's with me." She picked up the cup with both hands and held it in her hand. She felt the slight heat wake her up. "I have someone I like." This time, Xiaoqi was stunned. "You have someone you like?" "Yes." "Then why did you come on a blind date?" He saw that Shi Mingwan didn't look like one of those two-timing women. "Because my parents don't know, and even if they did, they might object." "I see." She didn't say more, but Xiaoqi seemed to understand. "Is it because the person you like can't agree to your family's conditions, so your parents object?" Shi Mingwan knew that it wasn't because of that, but since Xiaoqi was certain, she didn't want to explain anymore. Her silence was tacit agreement. Xiaoqi nodded. "I understand. The person you like doesn't want to marry into the family, and your parents object?" Thinking about it, most men, especially now that many of them were only children, how could they agree to marry into the family? "Mingwan, we already know each other. I think if possible, you should go and do the ideological work for your parents. That would be better. I thank you, but there's no need. Some things aren't as simple as you think." Shi Mingwan hadn't told her family about this at all, nor did she tell Jean Hauser. She wasn't sure if Jean Hauser would agree or not. She wasn't willing to continue, so Xiao-Qi didn't ask. The waiter began to serve the dishes, and the two of them ate in silence. When Xiao-Qi put down the bowl and chopsticks, he looked at Shi Mengwan. You like that person a lot. I love him. Shi Mengwan also put down her chopsticks. When she answered these 3 words, her eyes lit up, and her entire face was filled with the light of love. What else did Xiao-Qi not understand? Okay, I got it. I won't disturb you again next time. Sorry, it's okay. Xiao-Qi was able to let it go. But Mengwan, as your friend, I still want to give you a suggestion. Since you like that man so much, then can that man also sacrifice himself for you? I don't think it's a big deal to marry into the family. Even if the child takes your surname, he will still be his child in the future. This is the truth. Times are different, so there are some things that don't need to be rigidly formal. What do you think? Thank you, I understand. I'm sorry, I was being too talkative. Anyway, I feel that if that man really loves you, he will definitely agree to this condition. Shi Mengwan was silent. After Xiao-Qi left, she was still sitting in her seat. If a man really loved her, would he agree to her conditions? But when that person was Zhang Haoze, why didn't she have any confidence at all? That night, Zhang Haoze didn't come again. She called him, and he said that he had something to do. Shi Mengwan hung up the phone and thought about how to bring up this matter the next time she saw Zhang Haoze. It wasn't until the 3rd day that Shi Mengwan finally saw Zhang Haoze when she returned home. He didn't look any different, but Shi Mengwan could tell from his furrowed brows that he seemed to be a little depressed. Zhang Haoze. Chapter 672. Zhang Haoze shook his head and reached out to pull her into his arms. Shi Mengwan was hugged by him, and she didn't move for a moment. She wanted to look up at him, but the back of her head was held down by him. The faint smell of mint on his body entered her nose. Shi Mengwan noticed that Zhang Haoze seemed to be different from before. After a while, he finally let go of her hand. His big hand caressed her cheek, and she just looked at him. Have you eaten? No. Shi Mengwan looked in the direction of the kitchen. I'm about to cook. Go. Shi Mengwan glanced at him. She wasn't in a hurry to go to the kitchen. Instead, she looked at him. Are you really okay? Zhang Haoze shook his head. Shi Mengwan bit her lip. She knew that Zhang Haoze was always like this. When he was still her dear brother, he didn't like to tell her anything. I'll go cook. While eating, Shi Mengwan kept looking at Zhang Haoze. She paused when she met his gaze. Zhang Haoze, yes, I don't know much about business, but if you have anything to say, you can tell me. I might not be able to help, but I can listen to you. Zhang Haoze was stunned for a moment. He looked at Shi Mengwan and nodded slightly. Okay. He said okay, but he might not really agree. Shi Mengwan knew. She didn't ask anymore. Just when she thought Zhang Haoze wouldn't speak, Zhang Haoze spoke. I have to go out tomorrow. Shi Mengwan didn't expect him to take the initiative to tell her about his whereabouts. Her hand holding the chopsticks stopped there, and she stared at him blankly. I might be gone for more than half a month. That long. Shi Mengwan bit her lip. Her words were unconsciously tainted with disappointment. Zhang Haoze didn't say anything and just continued eating. Shi Mengwan knew his personality. He couldn't say anything nice, but she still hoped to see Zhang Haoze's reluctance to part with her. However, he appeared so calm. Shi Mengwan didn't wait for Zhang Haoze to say that he was reluctant to part with her. However, at night, it was as if he had returned to the beginning of their relationship. He took with all his might and plundered with all his might. In the end, Shi Mengwan felt that her waist was about to break, but Zhang Haoze didn't stop until she was exhausted and fell into a deep sleep. When Shi Mengwan woke up in the morning, Zhang Haoze was already gone. Looking at the empty house, she could not help but feel a sense of loss in her heart. He picked up his phone to check the time. When he opened the web page, he saw 2 words. Wait for me. There were no more words, only these 2 words. Shi Mengwan's disappointment suddenly disappeared. Of course, she would wait for him. She had waited for so long. He didn't mind waiting for another half a month. No one knew where he was going or what he was going to do. Half a month? Come to think of it, that was really a long time. Shi Mengwan's dilemma didn't last long. She received a call from Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang and Hui Jinyao had decided to return to Rome City together. Not only did they want to go back, but they also wanted to bring Xiang Kaiping back with them. The melancholy of parting made sure Mengwan recover from the disappointment she felt just now. Sure Mengwan and Su Qingsang were high school classmates and desk mates. Ever since the two of them met, they had gotten along very well in the past few years because they were very compatible. Even though the two of them later chose completely different majors, their relationship had always been very good. The medical university was also very close to her Z University. Although going to Rome City was still in the country, it couldn't be compared to Lin City. On the 13th of the year, Su Qingsang and Hui Jinyao were at the airport, preparing to fly to Rome City. Shi Mengwan was reluctant to leave. She went to the airport early and talked to Su Qingsang for a long time. Su Qingsang was also reluctant to leave her, and she didn't look very happy. She seemed to have something on her mind. Shi Mengwan didn't think too much about it, thinking that she was reluctant to leave Lin City. In fact, she was also reluctant to leave. She didn't sleep well last night, and there were dark circles under her eyes. When Su Qingsang noticed it, she could only remind her again not to focus on drawing next time and ignore her health. Shi Mengwan knew that she really cared about her and was touched. After sending Su Qingsang away, Shi Mengwan thought for a while and put her energy back into work. Since she planned to participate in the competition in France, she had to put some effort into it. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Shi Mengwan thought of Zhang Haoze again. She still remembered that year when the two of them ate lantern dumplings together, and she also remembered that he bought the wine-fermented meatballs as lantern dumplings. Not wanting her emotions to be trapped in her thoughts of Zhang Haoze, Shi Mengwan went home. Mother Shi made the lantern dumplings and waited for her. When she ate the lantern dumplings, she took a photo and posted it on her WeChat moments. Then, she sent the photo to Zhang Haoze alone. The lantern dumplings are very sweet. I miss you very much. She never received a reply from Zhang Haoze. At first, Shi Mengwan kept looking at her phone, but later, she simply put it down. She focused on accompanying her parents and sister. At the same time, in Qing City, Zhang Haoze was sitting in the car, and beside him was his assistant, Tang Hua. President Zhang. Tang Hua placed a document in Zhang Haoze's hand. I've already checked. The old man isn't feeling well and has already been hospitalized. He was sent in yesterday. It's the festival today. The old man dislikes those people for being noisy and chased them away. Zhang Haoze casually flipped through the information in front of him under the lights in the car. Are you sure there's no one? There are bodyguards guarding the door and doctors on duty. Let's go. Zhang Haoze placed the document back in Tang Hua's hand. Let's go meet the old man. Boss. Tang Hua even called him by his old name. Isn't it too early? I heard from the doctor that he has already passed the critical stage. It seems that the old man can still live for a long time. We don't have to be in a hurry. No. Zhang Haoze stared at the entrance of the hospital with a sinister gaze. I don't want to wait anymore. In the VIP ward of the hospital, the entire floor was very quiet. The weather in Qing City had been pretty good these few days. The full moon hung high in the sky outside. In the ward, an old man who looked to be in his 70s was sleeping on a hospital bed with his eyes tightly closed. The sudden sound in the room made him open his eyes. The environment he had been in for decades made him instantly alert. His hand reached under the pillow. If I were you, I wouldn't act rashly now. The man deliberately lowered his voice, but it sounded very clear. The old man's hand paused. The lights in the ward were turned on at this moment, and he narrowed his eyes. After adapting to the light, he looked at Zhang Haoze in front of him. It's you? It seems that the old man knows me. Then I don't need to introduce myself. Zhang Haoze walked to the sofa opposite the bed and sat down. He folded his legs elegantly, and he looked relaxed and leisurely. The old man stared at him for a long time and nodded gently. I didn't expect you to come back after so many years. Yes, I've disappointed you that I didn't die outside. Zhang Haoze met the old man's sharp gaze and didn't dodge at all. The corners of his lips curled up with a hint of mockery. The old man coughed a few times, and his face was redder than before. "You came back to take revenge?" The old man narrowed his eyes. His old and shrewd eyes didn't miss any of Jean House's expressions. The corners of Jean House's lips curled up slightly. He leaned back against the back of the sofa. "Shouldn't I?" The old man was silent and stared at Jean House. "What do you want to do?" "You should ask me what I did." The old man glared at Jean House, and a hint of wariness suddenly appeared in his eyes. "What did you do?" Jean House didn't answer the old man's question. He got up and walked to the end of the bed. He pulled out the medical record and glanced at it. "I think it's better for you not to know now." Putting the medical record back, Jean House's expression was indifferent. "Otherwise, I'm afraid that if you know, your condition will worsen and you die of anger. That would be my sin. Don't you think so?" "Grandpa." The old man covered his chest because of his words. His other hand pointed at Jean House, and his face was livid. Jean House looked at him without any fluctuation. He looked at this old man who could be considered to be in his twilight years, Jean Cohen. Jean Cohen had difficulty breathing. He reached out his hand to get the medicine. The moment he got the medicine bottle, Jean House gently pinched the bottle in his hand. He flipped the bottle over and raised it a little higher. "Grandpa, why are you angry? You are the pillar of the Jean family now. If you were to fall, the Jean family would be in a mess." Jean Cohen's expression became even uglier. He looked at Jean House as if he was looking at an azura from hell. He raised his hand, but he didn't manage to grab the medicine. He could only reach out and want to ring the bell for help. Jean House looked at his movements and saw that his trembling fingers were about to touch the bell. However, he grabbed Jean Cohen's hand the moment he was about to touch it. Jean Cohen panted even more violently. Jean House expressionlessly pressed his body back onto the bed. Before he could react, he poured out a pill from the bottle and put it into his mouth. After feeding him the medicine, he seemed to have been stained with something dirty. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his hands clean. After taking the medicine, Jean Cohen's breathing finally stopped. However, his expression couldn't recover for a while. Seeing Jean House's actions, his face turned from white to red again. His swollen face, which had almost turned purple, looked a little terrifying under the light. "You," Jean Cohen pointed at Jean House and spent a lot of effort to finish his sentence. "You, what exactly do you want to do?" Jean House looked at the expression on Jean Cohen's face and suddenly smiled. He rarely smiled, and his smile at this moment undoubtedly carried deep malice. He threw the handkerchief to the side, bent down, and looked at Jean Cohen. He looked at his old and turbid eyes and said word by word extremely slowly, "I'm here to get back what I deserve." Jean Cohen glared at him, and his hands trembled even more. Jean House didn't want to let it go just like that. He moved forward a little, and his voice was even softer than before. "After you get it, destroy it." Jean Cohen was completely out of breath this time. His eyes widened, and his breath was stuck there, almost suffocating. The corners of Jean House's lips curled into a mocking smile. Before the other party completely fainted, he pressed the bell. He stood up straight and looked at Jean Cohen's powerless hand. He left the ward without looking back. When he left, he bumped into the doctors who had rushed over. The doctors were very concerned about the people in this special ward. When they saw Jean House suddenly appear, they didn't understand where this person came from. Jean House acted as if he didn't see them and walked straight out. The bodyguard who had been staying inside just now had already come back to his senses. He reached out to stop Jean House. Jean House glanced at the two people coldly. The aura of the two bodyguards was actually taken away by him, and they took a step back at the same time. "Are you serious?" Today, the young man came home and told her that he had helped her solve the problem of going to school, so she could continue going to school. This news made her exceptionally happy. "Yes." The young man nodded. Looking at the news he brought, Sherman-Wan's eyes lit up. She felt that this decision was right. "That's really great." Sherman-Wan couldn't help but reach out and hug Xiaoze. "Dear brother, how did you do it?" Xiaoze was caught off guard by her and felt a little uncomfortable. His hand hung there and didn't move for a long time. After Sherman-Wan finished hugging him, she realized that she was a little too excited. She took a step back and looked at the young man, feeling a little embarrassed. Dear brother, when can I go to school? You can go tomorrow. Xiaozhe looked at Shi Mengwan. It's the nearby 5th high school. They have already agreed to accept you. You can go and register tomorrow. Then you can go to school. Really? Shi Mengwan was very happy. That's really great. After being happy, she looked at the young man with concern. Then, dear brother, what about you? Me? What about me? I'm going to school. What about you? I won't go. It's the same for you. Dear brother? Shi Mengwan looked at the young man. Even if she didn't understand the key point, she could understand that with Xiaozhe's current ability, he must have done something for her to be able to go to school without a Lin City Huku. She didn't understand what he had done. To her, everything about the young man was like a mystery. He could always solve all the problems in the shortest time. Dear brother, if you don't go to school, then I won't go either. What nonsense are you talking about? The young man glared at her. Didn't you want to be a designer? Why? You don't want it anymore? Shi Mengwan bit her lip and looked at the young man. She kept shaking her head. No, I want to go to school with you. All right, you don't have to worry about my matters. The young man looked at her with a strong expression that couldn't be refused. Don't worry about me for now. I've asked the teacher. She said that you haven't been to school for the past 6 months and might not be able to keep up. Before school starts, you have to buy a semester's worth of books to read first. Dear brother, let's go. I'll take you to buy books. Shi Mengwan couldn't win against Xiaozhe, so she could only compromise. She didn't quite understand why the young man didn't go to school himself. She vaguely knew why, but at that time, she was still young, so she couldn't understand the answer. Shi Mengwan waited for a few days, but Zhang Haoze didn't appear. Another half a month passed, and it was already the first month of the lunar calendar. In the middle of the second month of the lunar calendar, the temperature in Lin City began to rise. At first, Shi Mengwan would try to call Zhang Haoze, but after she realized that she couldn't get through to his phone, she stopped calling him. Every day before she went to bed, she would call Zhang Haoze. If she couldn't get through, she would send another message. If no one replied, she would go back to sleep. At the same time as the weather warmed up, Shi Mengwan's work also passed the preliminary round of the French fashion design competition. The other party sent an invitation letter and asked Shi Mengwan to prepare to go to France to participate in the rest of the competition. This good news more or less made Shi Mengwan feel a little better, but it only lasted for less than half a day. Chapter 673. Shi Mengwan was wearing the new clothes Xiaozhe had bought for her and carrying the new school bag Xiaozhe had bought for her. The book inside was also bought by Xiaozhe. The school bag was very heavy, not only for this semester, but also for the previous semester. Fortunately, Shi Mengwan's grades had always been good. Although she didn't study last semester, she believed that she would work hard to catch up. She was thinking about why the teacher called her today and didn't give her any homework. Instead, he asked her to read through the books that she had read before. If there was anything she didn't understand, she could look for her teacher. She was in a good mood and quick in her pace. After living in this bungalow for more than half a year, she was no longer as careless as when she first came here. Turn right, turn left. Just 3 more alleys and they would reach home. But before he got there, he heard the sounds of fighting. This area was really chaotic. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but quicken her steps. She wanted to avoid it, but she heard a familiar voice. What? How about you learned your lesson from last time? The youth's voice had already passed the stage of puberty. His voice had already begun to become clear and bright, and it was the voice she heard every day. She widened her eyes and couldn't help but stop in her tracks. She quietly walked over and hid behind the corner of the wall. She silently poked her head out. Beside the young man stood a few boys that she did not recognize. They were all about the same age as him. There were few people lying on the ground. The leader's face was covered in blood, and the young man's foot was stepping on the man's chest. What if you haven't learned it? I'll say it again. This place, as well as the East Pier, are all my territory. The next time you cross the border, I won't be polite anymore. The young man was already more than 8 meters tall, and he was thin. Most of the time, although he was quiet in front of her, he was gentle. Shi Mengwan had never seen this youth before. Her heart was beating a little fast. The person he was stepping on wanted to get up. Stinking brat. I'm telling you, don't be arrogant. Brother Liang won't let you off. Eh. The youth laughed. It was a very arrogant laugh. He began to exert force on his leg. Brother Liang won't let me off, right? Then let him try. Not to mention Brother Liang. Even if he had the ability to call Big Boss Wee over, I wouldn't be afraid of him. Understand? As he spoke, his foot was pressed against the man's chin. That person's neck was stepped on, and his face was filled with pain. His face, which had already been beaten into a pig's head, looked even scarier now. The man started to lose his breath, but the young man had no intention of letting go. Not only did he not, but he also stepped even harder. The man's eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets, and he was about to stop breathing. Shi Mengwan was shocked and couldn't help but gasp. That voice was very soft, but it moved Xiao Zhe. The young man's gaze shifted over. Shi Mengwan quickly retracted her body, but she was still a step too late and was seen by the youth. The young man's expression was rather ugly. He retracted his leg, caught his breath, and coughed violently. He turned to look at the few people following him and gave them a look. Those people began to deal with the aftermath. The people lying on the ground were quickly dragged away by them. The young man's expression was solemn as he clenched his fists at his sides. He was only stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. His slender legs walked step by step in Shi Mengwan's direction. Shi Mengwan's body was trembling. In the past half a year that she had been with the young man, other than occasionally coming back with some injuries, the young man had rarely been injured in the past few days. She knew that he would fight outside, but she had never seen the young man treat others like this. It turned out that the young man wasn't uninjured. Instead, had he changed from a victim to a perpetrator? Shi Mengwan didn't dare to think about it. Her body was trembling. She didn't know what she was afraid of. However, the ruthlessness on the young man's face just now really scared her. A pair of long legs suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. She looked up along the legs and saw the young man's expressionless face. Her body actually went limp, and she sat on the ground just like that. The young man wasn't in a hurry to reach out to help her up. He was already 16 years old. He was tall and thin, and one could already see the shadow of an adult on his body. He stared at her face from above, his lips opening and closing. You saw it. Shi Mengwan instinctively wanted to shake her head, but her body was cold, and she couldn't say a word. However, there was a hint of fear in her eyes as she looked at him. The young man looked at her and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mengwan's body trembled. Thinking about the scene just now, she instinctively retreated, wanting to avoid the young man's hand. Xiao Zhe narrowed his eyes, and there was a hint of danger in them. He had asked someone to think of a way to get Shi Mengwan a place to go to school, because he didn't want her to stay at home every day, and he didn't want her to see him like this today. However, he didn't expect her to still see it. Looking at Shi Mengwan's avoiding gaze, he forcefully reached out his hand and took away Shi Mengwan's school bag. He carried it on his shoulder. Before she could react to what he was going to do, he bent down and picked her up. Shi Mengwan's body trembled even more, but she was familiar with the young man's embrace. She looked at the young man's handsome side profile and swallowed her saliva. The young man didn't seem to notice that something was wrong with her. He just carried her back to the bungalow where they were. After Shi Mengwan entered the door, her legs were still a little weak. The young man placed her on the sofa. Almost as soon as she was put down by him, she shrunk to the other side of the sofa. The young man suddenly moved his face closer. His big hand supported her side as he stared at her face. Are you afraid of me? Shi Mengwan looked at the young man's familiar face. These days, they slept together every night. Sometimes, when she was cold, she would wake up to find herself in a young man's arms. The environment of the bungalow was bad, but she had never been cold. She had never been hungry. She suddenly shook her head. Her movements were very gentle but firm. Before the young man could take his hand away, Shi Mengwan bit her lip and said timidly, Did you want to kill him just now? He didn't expect her to ask such a question. The young man was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head. No. Shi Mengwan seemed to be relieved. You don't kill anyone, okay? The young man looked into her eyes and caressed her face with his slender and well-defined hands. Okay, I won't kill anyone. Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. The young man's hands were a little cold. The weather hadn't turned warm in this season. She looked at him with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Killing is against the law. She said this in a very low voice. The young man seemed to want to laugh, but he held it in. Yes, killing is against the law. Mengwan really knows a lot. He was treating her like a child. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and suddenly raised her voice. Don't care. If you kill someone, you'll go to prison. I won't go to see you when the time comes. She said it resolutely, but the expression in her eyes was completely different. The young man looked at her duplicitous look and raised his eyebrows. Oh, if I go to prison, you won't come to see me? Of course. Shi Mengwan nodded and emphasized, if you go to prison, I'll go home and let you be alone in the future. Her face was young and childish. The young man suddenly reached out and hugged her in his arms. Okay, I'll listen to you. His embrace made Shi Mengwan relax. She wasn't as afraid as before, and she was no longer trembling. Dear brother, don't do anything dangerous, okay? The young man didn't answer her question. He just tightened his arms. Shi Mengwan had a little difficulty breathing, but she still had to say, if you do something dangerous, what will I do? She reached out to push him away and moved away from his arms a little. Dear brother, if you're really locked up, or if something else happens, what will I do? After such a long time, she had run away from home, but she had never felt lonely because of him. His care and love for her made her forget the loneliness of being alone. More importantly, she realized that her dear brother was different in her heart. Dear brother, I don't want anything to happen to you, and I don't want to be separated from you. So you have to take care of yourself, okay? The young man looked into her eyes. Her lips opened and closed as she said words that she was worried about him. Today, she saw his dark side, but she wasn't afraid, nor did she run away. He couldn't tell what he felt in his heart. Something was surging in his heart. He hugged her tightly again and buried his face in the crook of her neck. His voice was very soft as he smelled the faint fragrance of a young girl on her body. Okay, I promise you. I'll take care of myself and won't be separated from you. Really? Really? Shi Mengwan raised her head and looked into the young man's eyes. Her heart had already calmed down. She bit her lip. Dear brother, we'll always be together, right? Yes. The young man nodded and looked into Shi Mengwan's eyes with a focused expression. We'll always be together. He would be with her, protect her, and not let anyone hurt her. Dear brother, Shi Mengwan reached out and hugged the young man's waist. No matter how her dear brother treated others, as long as they could be like this forever, it would be fine. She hugged him very tightly until she saw the trace of blood on the young man's sleeve. She was shocked and forced herself not to look and not to care. She stepped back. She gestured for him to take a shower. She washed his clothes for him, so the blood stain was naturally washed away. However, even though Shi Mengwan could wash away the blood stain, it didn't mean that she could forget the young man's ruthless expression. That night, she inevitably had nightmares. She dreamed that the young man was holding a knife in his hand and was constantly slashing at a person whose face couldn't be seen clearly. She screamed with all her might, trying to make the young man stop. When the young man saw her coming, he finally stopped. The young man walked towards her and told her not to be afraid. Shi Mengwan kept shaking her head. Looking at the police who rushed over, she wanted to tell the young man to leave quickly, but she couldn't say anything. She could only watch helplessly as the police took the young man away. No matter how much she cried, it was useless. At this moment, the scene in the dream changed. The young man's face became Jean Hausa. When she saw Jean Hausa again, it was through the iron window. Shi Mengwan was frightened. She wanted to pull his hand, but his figure was getting further and further away. She woke up from her dream screaming, "Dear brother, dear brother." The scene in the dream began to enlarge, and that feeling made her fall into deep despair. She opened her eyes and was shocked by the figure at the head of the bed. When she saw clearly, she realized that the person sitting there was Jean Hausa. Jean Hausa? She wasn't fully awake yet, nor had she recovered from the dream. She suddenly saw him, and she still felt like she was in a dream. Yes. In the next second, Shi Mingwan suddenly sat up and wrapped her arms around Zhang Hao's neck. She hugged him tightly. Dear brother, dear brother. When she thought of the figure in the iron window in her dream, she felt a strong sense of insecurity. She hugged him very tightly and pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Zhang Hao let her hug him and didn't move. Shi Mingwan suddenly raised her head and kissed his lips. Her kiss was a little urgent and a little flustered. She was also a little scared. She didn't know what her dear brother had experienced all these years. What made him, a street thug, suddenly become a business elite? She also didn't know how he started the company and what hardships he had experienced. But she thought that he should be safe now, right? It shouldn't be like what she thought in her dream, right? She couldn't help but think of the last time they met. He seemed to be fighting with someone again. That made the feeling of insecurity even more obvious. Dear brother. She kissed his lips haphazardly. All her experience came from him. In this aspect, she was undoubtedly clumsy. But this clumsiness made Zhang Hao lose control. Her hands tugged at his clothes. She was a little anxious. She was so anxious that she couldn't unbuckle her belt, even after trying a few times. Her face was red, but at this moment, Zhang Hao turned the tables and pressed her down on the bed. It was a dark night, and the weather outside was a little gloomy. Spring had arrived, and there was a lot of rain. It was accompanied by the occasional sound of spring thunder. Soon, it started to rain outside. The sound of the thunderstorm covered up the sound of the collision in the room. Those emotions that were out of control also existed on such a thunderstorm night. When Shi Mingwan woke up in the morning, she thought she had a dream. She dreamed that Zhang Hao had returned and that he was fine. She dreamed that they were the same as before. She enjoyed the pleasure of being intimate. She opened her eyes, and the feeling of exhaustion and weakness in her body suddenly woke her up. It wasn't a dream. Was Zhang Hao really back? She sat up abruptly, ignoring the marks on her body and the discomfort on her body. There was no one in the room. She casually put on her clothes and went outside. Zhang Hao had just closed the door. On the dining table beside him was breakfast that had just been delivered. You're awake? Shi Mingwan blinked her eyes. Only then did she confirm that she was really not dreaming. She went forward and hugged Zhang Hao again. She rubbed her face against his chest and smelled the mint scent on his body. Her heart slowly relaxed, and she finally wasn't so nervous anymore. She looked up at him and realized that he seemed to have lost a little weight. She didn't take a closer look last night, but now that it was daytime, she took a closer look and realized that Zhang Hao had lost a lot of weight. Not only had he lost weight, but he also looked a little haggard. She had many questions to ask, but in the end, she could only hug him again. Thinking of his appearance, she sniffed and her eyes inexplicably felt a little hot. Zhang Hao let her hug him without moving. After a while, he patted her back. Let's eat. Shi Mingwan nodded and walked to the dining table to sit down. Today wasn't the weekend, and she still had to go to work. She looked up at Zhang Hao. You're back from your business trip? Can you rest for the next few days? Yes. Shi Mingwan nodded and looked at him again. Will you come back for dinner tonight? Zhang Hao looked at her. He still had a lot of things to do. He had to leave again after a few days, but okay. She wanted to refuse, but the words that came out of her mouth became affirmative. Shi Mingwan smiled and seemed to be relieved. After dinner, Shi Mingwan went to the company. She had spent a few days to draw the work that she was going to compete in. She had named it Blue Mystery. To her, Zhang Hao was that mystery, but she wasn't in a hurry. She had the patience to slowly solve this mystery. Zhang Hao got into the car, and Tang Hua looked at him worriedly. Boss, are you okay? Zhang Hao shook his head. The car accident had caused Zhang Hao to suffer some minor injuries. However, he refused to rest for long. Instead, after he finished his matters in Qing City, he came here. He roughly knew that the person upstairs was his boss's favorite. But, boss, I'm afraid we'll have a lot of things to do in the future. Moreover, the situation is getting more and more chaotic. It's not appropriate for you to be like this now. Tang Hua had followed Zhang Hao for a long time. In the past 10 years, What hadn't they experienced? But in the past, those undercurrents were still calm on the surface, but now was different. Zhang Hao's appearance in Qing City was equivalent to turning everything over to the surface. Although that car accident didn't cause much damage, it was definitely a warning. Zhang Kuan wasn't dead yet, and those people below weren't honest. Not to mention that there were countless people who didn't like Zhang Hao and wanted to get rid of him. Boss, why don't you stay away from Miss Shi for now? With their current abilities, even if they could protect Shi Mengwan, it wouldn't be good for such a big weakness to be known by others. Zhang Hao leaned against the back of the chair with his eyes half closed. His face was gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. He didn't say anything, so Tang Hua couldn't say much. The car drove towards the Qin Corporation's building. Just as they were about to reach the Qin Corporation's building, Zhang Hao finally spoke. From tomorrow onwards, I'll move back to the Qin family. Boss, you've been living in the Qin family all this time. Do you think those people don't know? The problem now wasn't where he lived, but he didn't finish his sentence, but Zhang Hao understood what he meant. His face was gloomy, and his expression looked quite solemn. Boss, just listen to me. Tang Hua had told him long ago, but Zhang Hao had always refused. Was he still hesitating at this time? Stop talking. Boss, what will happen if you get engaged to Miss Chun? It's not like you're getting married. This period of time is just right to divert their attention. It's good for you and sister-in-law Shi. Zhang Hao pursed his lips into a straight line, and his gaze kept looking out of the window. Seeing this, Tang Hua called out again. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.